have a nameplate, I'll get it for you. Take it with you and pick a seat. There you are, sir.
Thank you.
Have a seat. And I think Rhea's not here, Steve's not here. Big thing.
Excuse me.
Here comes Tom.
I don't know if Steve will be here tonight because of his mother, but if you were waiting for him.
No, Steve will not be on, and either will Catherine.
Okay.
Do you know about Ron?
I
don't know.
texted him earlier today, but I didn't hear back.
I can call him right now. Steve.
I talked with him this afternoon. I know he's aware of it.
Okay. Sorry, I would have been there in person, but I would have been late. So I had to get on the computer.
Yes, push your button in the middle, everyone tutorial your button, and then when you're green, you're good to go.
Leave it on? Just
Yeah,
leave
if you're gonna talk a lot, you could leave it on. They're not very sensitive, so.
Okay, call the meeting to order at 6:04 PM. Kate, can you call the roll?
Steve Carreau, Rhea Ortner,
Here.
Barb Hart,
Here?
Andrew Duarte,
Here.
Ron Mitchell, Danielle Kraus,
Here.
Steve Roundtree,
Here.
Catherine Vallon, Tanya Corvalin.
Here.
Thank you all.
There's Ron.
Oh, yes.
Just jumped on.
Ron Mitchell. Here. All right, just in time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing and seeing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Can you call the roll? That feels weird.
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes.
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Tanya Corvalin.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Great, thank you. And do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? Miranda, do we have anyone on from the public?
You don't. Cynthia's here. She may be joining us for the parking. She might not be able to hang out the whole night, but I don't know if Tom, have any comments?
No comment. I haven't read the packet, so I shouldn't.
Great. Not seeing or hearing any other. Let's move on to the next agenda item. Miranda, do you want to move the other discussion items before the action item, or should we do the action item first?
Well, I'm sure Nikki and Sam would appreciate going first. Yep. If you, if the board wouldn't mind making a motion to at least just move Trails Master Plan and Pump Track. Jim Reese is coming to do parking and he won't be here till 7. So can we split the discussion in 2?
I'm okay with that. Do we need a motion to do
I would
that?
do a motion to move Pump Track and Trails Master Plan and get that vote.
Okay. Would anyone like to make that motion?
Motion to move the pump track and what trail master plan to the front of the agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
And Kate, would you call the roll?
Rhea Ortner,
Yes.
Barb Hart,
Yes?
Andrew Duarte,
Yes.
Ron Mitchell,
Yes.
Danielle Kraus,
Yes.
Steve Roundtree,
Yes.
Tanya Corvallin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So, and I'd like to have the 2 start with the Pump Track, which Nikki Dunn, Parks Manager, and Sam Ovett, Pro Sub member, we're going to introduce.
Great, thank you.
Wonderful. My name is Sam Ovett from the ProSat board, and we are real excited about the potential for developing a pump track. I know there's been a history there that I've learned about. That was before my time. And then this new round of looking at the pump track, Nikki and I got together after Jesse Sievers came to the ProSat board, who runs High Performance Earthworks, and some of you probably know him. He's real involved with town. And he said, hey, I'll donate $20,000 to make a pump track and some downhill bike courses happen. Can we do that? Is there space for that? And so Nikki and I, we started walking around and going, where could this go? What are the options? And started looking at options so we could present it. So it's a bit preliminary in this stage in a way, but it could happen quickly if everybody's excited about it, is what it boils down to. And do you have it on there, Miranda, as the 2 separate items? Just wanted to clarify that.
Trails Master Plan, Pump Track.
Or I just want to talk to the microphone, as the pump track and the progressive downhill.
Oh, yes, I have them split as the
Okay.
2 questions.
Wonderful. So the pump track, let's talk about that one first, because they're really best talked about separately because they're different sites and they have their different considerations. The pump track is, we're looking at Chipeta Park, and I'm going to let Nikki talk to why that is beneficial to her and actually helps, and then why that site is something that makes sense and where it is on that site. So,
All right, so if you're at Chipeta Park, from the basketball court over to the parking lot, we have an area where I have maintenance problems with our irrigation system. And so for me, putting the pump track there at Chipeta makes a lot of sense. First of all, I see kids on a regular basis coming down there to learn how to ride bicycles, and they tend to use the basketball court. So what we would be doing is offering an expansion of an area of where they could learn how to ride their bicycles. Speaking maintenance wise, it really makes a lot of sense because, like I said, that's a kind of a defunct area. It would actually save me time and maintenance. It would save us as the town in water. There are no environmental concerns with that area as far as what's growing there already. Also, it has a lot of appeal, keeping it in Chipeta. We can now be able to tell the kids that are riding their bicycles in the skate park that they can go over to the pump track and ride their bikes at the pump track. It also allows a mom and dad, say with 3 or 4 kids, to be able to come down and be able to participate in multiple items all in one location. Parking wise, it makes a lot of sense. We already have a lot of parking at Chipeta. People are coming there for outdoor recreation opportunities anyway. It allow us to invite people to come into town or people that are already in town to utilize our parks and our businesses for going to have lunch or whatever that looks like. This pump track area at Chipeta Park would really be a smaller kind of instructional type course. It wouldn't be the type of course that you would see, pro maniac pump trackers coming
Right,
in.
it's not like big dirt jumps on that one. This is like purely a flow pump track course, and I'll pass this visual around. This is a book from a gentleman in Boulder. It's all about how to build pump tracks, and so we were looking through this for actual final, ideas for actually finalizing it. But I think this one, minus grass, because we're not going to be worrying about grass in this case, has a good sense of scale and feature size. So let me pass this around, and we can also show it on the video. There's a lot of that book.
We would be able to utilize the pump track itself to kind of create a barrier in between the basketball court and the pump track so that a basketball wouldn't necessarily be rolling onto the pump track and having a little kid run out to get their basketball. Nor would it create a problem of people riding their bikes and parking them onto the basketball court. So as we were looking at different options and places of where we could put the pump track, I know many of you might have heard about it being put up at the rink. We kind of looked at that site, and I kind of am opposed to that site a lot because if we take any trees away from the rink area, we're losing ice time. So any amount of shade that we're taking away from the rink, we're losing out on our hockey and ice season. And yeah, we presented this to the Youth Advisory Board yesterday, and we got a great response from the youth. They were very excited about the possibility of having a pump track right close to the teen center and the skate park, and kind of centrally located in town where we have a lot of adult supervision kind of in that area, so they wouldn't be running rampant. So I actually haven't been able to think of any opposition or problems with putting the pump track at Chipeta Park in this location. And I'm interested to hear what you all think.
Before we jump on with the questions, let's talk about costs and
Oh.
what that incurs relative to costs. And so I'll let you speak
Yeah.
to that since you have a better sense of it.
So because Jesse Severs has offered his time and equipment, he's also offered to follow the project for up to 3 years for maintenance. We already have the dirt and we have the materials needed. We are looking at a dirt pump track. We're not talking about putting an asphalt at Chipeta at this time. It is something that if we wanted to do that in the future, that we could look at that and possibly make that happen. But right now we are looking at really almost a zero cost as far as materials go, and to Public Works and our time and equipment. It would really be the show would be run by High Performance Earthworks. And so opportunity wise, that is an opportunity that we really don't want to pass up or miss when we're being offered something that is truly an asset to our town for almost free. Yeah.
And then I'll just speak to timeline that is possible is Jesse, since he's the main driver in terms of getting the work done. If we're all excited about it and we move through this public process and go through that part of it, he's motivated to make it happen, basically as early as we give him the go ahead and say, yep, we're move ahead. He's ready to roll. So like this summer, it could be in place.
Yep. It could be in place by the end of August, beginning of September. We could have this thing already ready to rock and roll. So that's really an exciting part too. If you want to see any of the type of work that Jesse can do and is capable of doing with his crew, he built the coffin race course for the Frozen Day event, and the dirt is still in the positions that it was in for the coffin race course. So if you go down there and look, you can see that he made a really cool, actually quite challenging coffin race course for Frozen Days. And the only reason that it's still there is just because we're going to probably just move that dirt to Chipeta if given the go ahead for this project.
I imagine that represents like how many years of riding a pump track. Yeah. And I just wanted to acknowledge real quickly, Tanya had sent an email to the ProSab board. And so I think I'd like to hear what some of those comments that she brought up, we can discuss those too here at this time, which I think would be good. I got an email back, but I had family in town, so it took me a moment to get back to it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, let's go around the board and see who has comments. And if Tanya has already sent some, let's start with Tanya.
Hi, I'm happy with this location. My main, I heard it was gonna be at the rink, and I was like, I like the idea of things being in town, close to the skate park, close to the teens, close to where one parent can be stationed and multiple age children can be having fun. Close to where kids can from either school, high school or elementary, could obviously the rink closer for elementary, but could meet in town and access all these assets. So I am really a proponent of keeping these things in town, centrally located and not scattered around the periphery. So I think it's a great location. I'm all for it. I'm excited to know that it can happen this quickly, and I want to, if Jesse's listening, thank him very much. Really appreciate such a generous donation of time and money. So yeah, I'm all for it. Mainly because it is centrally located and close to the skate park and close to everything else in town. So, thanks.
Great, thank you. And Steve Roundtree.
I think it's a really cool thing to potentially have in town. I would agree.
Yep.
Okay, and I would agree that if there's an opportunity to do something and leverage a donation, huge positive. When I initially looked at this, the one question I had, which I think we've kind of gone over, is just if there's two new kind of bike specific things happening, to have them separated, but it makes sense utilizing the space that's available to make them work. I think in a perfect world, it would be really cool to think that they were together.
Sure.
But you kind of need different terrain, and it makes sense to not put it up and infringe on the ability to have shade for the ice. So I think it's a cool idea. I go through that space in the park all the time. I think it would be a really nice addition to the mix of what's there. So
And I'll just make a note as we go around because you mentioned it, the separate part of it, like the downhill oriented kind of jumps, berms, that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that after, because it really, as we dove into it, it ended up making sense to decouple those two and think
Okay.
about them separately, because the other definitely has some more to think about, I would say, and a little bit more planning to do even to get to the stages, but we'll go over it tonight for discussion.
okay.
Great, thank you. And Rhea.
I guess my only concern is it sounds like it's going to be compacted dirt right now, the pump tracks itself, so that any of the landscaping between the course be seeded with like a low grow, kind of drought tolerant grass seed mix, and it taken care of so that we don't get an influx of noxious weeds after all that earthwork. And I haven't really seen the design of this thing. Just I leave it to your discretion to make sure that area is large enough for a really effective pump track. If you guys, I love the location. I think it's a better location than something out of town. As long as you guys think it's worthy spot, and I give kudos to Jesse Sievers for donating all that money and time. That's great. But really my main concern is just making sure that it looks good and that the areas between the actual track become vegetated and taken care of, so it doesn't turn into just like a big mud pit and cause erosion or sedimentation in the surrounding area.
I love it. Thank you, Rhea.
Great, thank you. And Andrew.
Yeah, I think Rhea kind of touched on what I was going to bring up. Just wanting to make sure there's, revegetation, because I know with that being kind of to the west of everything, park and basketball, with wind coming down as we do have in Nederland, just lots of dirt, being blown into basketball or other things going in the park. So anything we can do to keep dirt and dust from being scoured off the pump track would be important. And then I don't know, I guess it sounds like Jesse's donation will fully cover the cost, or has there been like a quote done based off of the whole design and total? Or did he just throw out a number that we're all assuming is going to be enough to cover the work?
Yeah, so I'll speak to that for just a moment. There's not an official quote out there. He put it in writing for us that he would make sure that they were done to completion. And that is actually a quote that includes the work for both a pump track and a downhill course. And on top of that, one of the motivations is he's a big mountain bike rider. So he wants to see it done and be able to ride on it and ride the downhill courses. And then the guys that he'd be paying that are on his crew also ride. He's done the site walks with us to actually see what we're talking about and been involved in the input stage for that reason. But there is a final, process of, okay, here's the official design, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Different.
Well, yeah.
Does that address the question a little? I know it's
Yeah,
like
that answers the question. If there's a quote done based off of a design that and that's in writing, that'll be covered by the generous donation. I think that's great, and I do agree. That area seems like a great area, and just that revegetation of any areas in between or around it, I think is important. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
And I'll add one more thing as we go, is that we actually had folks from the NATO board join us as well on these site walks, so they could have, excitement about it from the get-go and make sure that it was something that if we needed volunteer help over time with different things, to see what kind of support we had. And they immediately said, hey, we'd be happy to put trail days together to tune things up and adjust things. So we've got a lot of support from the bike community in Nederland already out of the gate with it, which I think is a really important thing, so that everybody is on the same page and excited about it.
We also had local people. Tin Shed was there. Gavin
Yeah.
Coombs, who runs Ned Gravel. We had quite a few of us were there for the site walks, and we had an amazing amount of people supporting and offering to help. So,
Awesome.
That was pretty exciting.
yep.
Yep.
Great, thank you. And Danielle.
I think this is a fabulous idea. I really appreciate Rhea's perspective in making sure that the ground is taken care of, that native plants are filled in, not more weeds. I could add that if there are any structural integrations, that we consider public art. And I'm very excited for adding to our town things for children and adults alike to enjoy with. I like that it's dirt rather than pavement also, so people can still feel that earthy feeling that Nederland has. I'm excited for this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Ron.
When Jesse sets his mind to something, there's just no stopping him. And I think that's wonderful. Because I've seen Jesse ride his bike in some pretty tight places. And I appreciate his enthusiasm, his donation, and his ability to get something like this off the ground and actually do it. I have one question. Would this be between the current parking lot and the basketball court? Is that where the exact location is?
Yes, sir. And then utilizing some of the hillside and that goes up toward Lakeview, while not impacting our emergency access there on that south side of Chipeta.
So, okay. So it's how wide and how long?
I don't know the exact measurements of it right now. I haven't walked it out, but it seems like about 40 by 125 feet.
That's a standard city lot. That's pretty good. All right. Anyway, my bottom line is I'm for it, and I'm glad he's willing to take the lead.
Great.
Great, thank you. I had just a couple of quick questions.
Yeah.
You said almost no cost. What does that mean?
The cost that I think that we would incur is the cost of putting the low-lying grass or vegetation back in
Okay.
between the basketball court and the pump track itself.
Okay.
That's something that I would do as as the Parks Department. I would absolutely eat that cost. And just to make sure that it's done right. I don't think that, so I would pay probably $250 for the grass seed that needed to go in there. And then we already have the irrigation there. I would cap most of that line, which would save me money. But I could potentially leave one of the heads open and running so that I could water any kind of seed that needed to be watered for those first baby stages of the grass that would be growing. Hopefully we would get the type of grass seed that wouldn't need watering for longer than a year or two.
Okay, that makes sense.
We could always explore the ProSat budget, for that
Hey,
small
thanks.
amount if you needed as well.
That's right. That's right.
And then my other question was, who will do the upkeep and maintenance on this once it's done? Is that a Parks and Rec?
No, Jesse Severs offered, well, yes, but Jesse Severs has offered to follow the project for the first 3 years that it was installed. And then after that, yeah, I assume that the Parks Department would be able to take care of any maintenance problems, with Jesse saying if we have big problems later down the road, he would be around for us. And like I said, and Sam said, that we had a lot of support at this meeting as well. And so I think eventually, I mean, I am kind of a control freak when it comes to my Parks Department. And so I actually have mentioned that I would always want to know if there was some kind of maintenance need for the pump track. And if Jesse was going to be in Chipeta Park with a Mini X, I'm going to need to know about that. So I imagine that would be run in tandem with the two of us.
And I should add that one thing with these pump tracks is pretty nice is it's basic maintenance work can be done with shovels and rakes. And so that looks like a volunteer trail day that NATO could organize. And they already said, hey, if you need us to organize these for these new features being put in, we're happy to do that. So that helps with the longevity of it, because once they're in, there's not a lot of like heavy lifting of any kind really that needs to be done unless you want to redesign it. So for reference.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. Do we have,
I have
Hey,
some.
this is Rhea. I'm sorry if I missed this in the packet, but I'm confused now exactly where this is going. With Ron's comment, now I'm confused.
Ray, it's going in between where the basketball court is and the existing parking lot. That front part of Chipeta Park, as you pull into the parking lot, you look right at it. And it kind of goes up onto that hillside that goes up towards Lakeview a little bit.
Right, so it's a pretty narrow grassy strip there, and
Yep.
and then let me just get my directions right. To the north of the basketball court, it's kind of a wider area there, right? So would that be included too?
Only a piece of it. We're going to utilize what I call Vole Mountain. That's I have a serious vole infestation there. We are going to utilize a little piece of Vole Mountain right there, but not going over across the trail and into to the willows at all.
Okay, yeah, that was my other question. And then a lot of times when I walk into Chipeta, I park there and then I walk on the trail that goes along kind of where the gazebo is. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep. That
So
won't be impacted.
That will or will not?
Will not. So we're going to maintain access to that because that is my emergency access for a fire department. It is also where I pull the fish trucks in there when we're getting the kids' fishing pond stocked.
Okay.
And it's also access for anybody that might need a truck or trailer brought into the field. Okay. So the part of the pump track that goes across that area will be kept kind of a flatter area.
Okay. Okay. All right, thanks. Yeah, was there something in the packet showing like any details? The packet's so big. I might have missed it, but thank you.
Yeah, we're passing around a book here that has some kind of design details, but the final design layout of it hasn't been done yet. We're trying to get approval for the site before we try and put.
Sure, I get it. Okay, thank you.
I will say we're certainly welcome to input on that. So we'll actually have, a design does have to be fully put together. and then we'll be glad to share that and get input. And when we lay it over the actual land, so to speak, as far as where it is, it'd probably be good for you to have a look and just make sure that there's not any environmental impacts going on.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. And Tom?
Yeah, I got several questions. I know exactly the spot because it is impossible to make grow. And I think this is a good use. You said roughly 40 by 120?
Very roughly. That is very, very roughly.
Okay. A couple things that come out when I look at this. Number one, these are all Colorado-based tracks, so I think I'm going to take a ride down to Lyons and look at theirs and look at some of the others. Is this kind of in line with what they've done in Lyons and other successful tracks, for instance?
That's a good question. I'm not sure as it relates to some of the tracks that are nearby that are mentioned in that book, but that gentleman is actually based in Boulder who wrote that book, which is kind of neat. I bet he'd be willing to come up potentially and have a look and maybe give some input or something.
Yeah.
I haven't reached out, so I have no idea. But
Okay. But yeah, it sounds like ballpark, looking at this, there's like 8 different designs and they all fit that space really well.
Right.
And especially since we're taking advantage of the side of the hill. The next thing, they say one of the successful tactics here is to keep it wet, but not too wet. And so we probably, wherever the riser is, probably should leave a hose out.
Well, we have the line already there, so
Yeah.
easy peasy.
Good, excellent. And having built a house and had Jesse do the dirt work and had him ride my foundation, I've seen how pump tracks work. In fact, we got a surveillance tape we sent to Larry Johns and tried to find the perpetrator.
That's great.
But I've seen how pump tracks work. I've got it on video. He's a very enthusiastic rider. But I see, it's basically, it's not too complicated. It's a sine wave. It's just basically a sine wave.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we can change it out. It looks like the successful ones change it out as time goes on, and writing changes the contour of it. So I think this is going to be superb, and I really like the proximity of it to all the other activities that we do, and the fact that it's got parking. So I give this a double thumbs up.
Cool.
Great to know.
Great, thank you. And do we have any other public comment? Hearing and seeing none. Are we just looking for not a 4 tonight? Is that kind of where we're at?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do an official vote, you could move it to action, but I think a not a 4 is okay. I mean, all Sam and Nikki really need to know is DDA agrees. You're in support of them continuing to go forward. This is kind of a unique situation in which it's a little bit actually use by right, but what the code says is you need to have a public hearing for building before any building permits are pulled. Which really is more like excavation permits. So we're adding the Nederland public process into this so that they get the not a 4 or the green light from all the boards. Since they don't really need to do this, but this is the right thing to do.
Okay. Great. I don't know if there's anyone that's on the meeting tonight on the board that's opposed. Do you want to speak up now? Otherwise, I think we probably have unanimous agreement to move forward. Hearing and seeing none, you have our approval that the DDA.
Thank you.
Back.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
So the other part is a separate.
Yeah, the other part's separate, and it's much more controversial, I believe. And so we can get into that, and I think it'll be more exciting. So, yeah. So let me explain the other concept, the sort of the point of it and what it is, and then there's a lot of room to look at site potential here. So this is very much something that is not decided that, oh, this is the site we want. We have some that we have our eyes on that we would really like. This one, and even in the last 2 weeks, we've evolved our understanding of some of the sites and some of the wildlife corridors that occur there, and some of the plant life that's there that's sensitive that we don't want to impact. So it's moving, and we want to open that up and just bring the other boards into the process early on with this one. What this looks like, I don't unfortunately have a good book. I'll try and find one. That was a great one. The idea with this is it is oriented around downhill mountain biking. So that was one of the big reasons we brought the NATO crew and everybody there. And we said, hey, we really want you guys to be involved because I ride bikes a lot. And even there's secret trails that I don't know about, you know? And so if we have someone there, we can make sure that some of the trails that get ridden and some of that network of bike trails that are really integral to people's riding experience in Nederland doesn't get messed up. And we're picking sites that respect that. So with that in mind, we're looking at anywhere, depending on the site, 1 to 6 downhill lanes. And you can imagine has anybody not been to a downhill bike course or seen one? You've ridden them. So you get a sense, like you have what's going on here is you want at least one downhill course that's got berms and is really quite friendly and not super challenging, more flowy. And then you want a medium one, you know, that's maybe got a tabletop jump that you could roll over if you didn't want to fully jump and you want to progress, or you could go around it and, you know, mix of those. And then maybe some gap jumps on a more advanced line. And what that does is that creates, and then you can have natural drop features if the terrain allows it, where you're maybe building up little platforms of wood, or however, there's a lot of different design features that can happen here. But basically, you're thinking about berms and jumps and little drop-offs and rock gardens and stuff like that. So it's downhill mountain biking. It's kind of the one feature of biking that we don't really have a lot of in Nederland, where you actually have jumps and defined flowy courses. We have a lot of amazing technical cross-country and some downhill single track, but nothing that's defined as this is for jumping, this is for, you know, flowing down the berms. There's a little bit of that up at West Magnolia, but not a lot. And that's what this course is designed to do, this downhill progressive flow track, so that you have people who are really competent playing in the same space as people who are beginning. And what that does, one of the big benefits, and I know this because I grew up in an area in Georgia, actually, where 1.5 miles from my house, we had a course that had about 300 feet of gradient, so actually not that much. And it has become this just gem of the community where people spend a lot of time, and mentorship occurs too. So not only is it an outlet, right, like any activity for kids, but you have the mentorship that occurs of skill progression when you have challenging lines nearby easy lines as well. So that's a really, I think, critical part of this, and what brings the community into it in a really cool way. So as far as sites go, is there any questions on the general sense of what this would be? Like we're very much in the early stages of planning this, and the terrain dictates what we can do. But are there any, before I move on to site ideas?
Yeah, have you done something like this across national forest land? I've seen some stuff right off of Caribou Road that kind of fits that description.
Yeah, so just in the community, there's already jumps that are being built and little things, and that's common, you know, like people go, this is fun, I'm gonna build something, and the terrain is allowing for it to happen. So I haven't been involved with a lot of it, but I've ridden that terrain and gotten to enjoy it. So with that in mind, the sites that we're looking at, the first site that we went to is, what was Big Springs? What do you call it?
Park.
Big Springs Park. We looked at that. That was interesting. For anybody who's not clear where that is, it's basically if you walk past Chipeta into the Big Springs neighborhood and you keep going, you kind of have to pop up on the road there. And then there's the map's up there. It's kind of a swath of land that becomes quite steep. I didn't really know about it. But it's not ideal, that one, for a couple reasons. Parking's challenging. It sort of crowds people back there. And with downhill, I think you do get a little more parking than you would with cross country and just riding to it. It's a little changing now with enduro mountain bikes that are out there. They're real capable, and people are taking them to the downhill courses. But it was, that one looked like, oh, maybe if nothing was happening with it, maybe like some skills stuff could happen there, like teeter-totters and that. But it was really not a priority. It just didn't seem to really fit what we were going for. And there's also this big cliff that drops off, and it's like a pretty, you would get seriously injured if you landed and crashed off that. And with these types of courses, you know, that potential exists to crash, and it just is like not ideal. And it's not even that cool of terrain relative to what else is out there. So, and it only allows for like one good lane. That's the other thing. So it gets crowded. The other site we went to is Joe Smith Park. And if you think about it, you can see it on the map, but I'll give you perspective. If you're coming up peak to peak from town, and then you take a left onto Indian
Peaks Drive.
just pretty much just past the Caribou Room, right?
Yep.
Right before School Road.
Yep.
That is a swath of land. I walked back there, and I knew there was trails back there, and I actually live up on Ridge Road, but I had no idea that there was such a big swath of land. And that was like, oh, wow, a really interesting spot. We actually had Michael Buell out there who you may or may not know him, but he's the general sales manager for Banshee Mountain Bikes and grew up in Nederland, helped build a bunch of the trail around here, and also raced professionally or pro amateur. I'll get it wrong a little bit, but he raced on downhill courses. He attends a bunch of downhill course events. So he's got a good eye for what kind of terrain can handle this stuff, and is also willing to help volunteer his time to do the design. And his brother does design work for bike courses, and also grew up in Nederland. So, and he's my neighbor, so I can talk to him easily about this, which is just useful to make things happen quicker in that way. But that said, he thought that the Joe Smith site actually had a lot of potential. And we were talking about it, and we got really excited about it. And what Nikki learned recently was that there's a lot of reasons that maybe we shouldn't touch that in this way. So why don't you share that? And then I'll talk about the final site that we're looking at the moment. We're open to suggestions here.
So actually, what happened was I read a report that Rhea wrote back in 2015, and it talked about the 222 different types of plants that grow in up there and the ecological impact that we would have on that wetland and wildlife corridor. So I kind of said, at first I was like, yeah, this would be a great spot. But then after learning that, said, no, maybe not. So then we moved to site number 3.
All right. So this is the controversial one. Potentially. I don't know.
You guys, whoever's controlling the screen, can you move up to the Joe Smith Park area?
Oh, yeah.
Because it was cut off. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, Ray. It gets all weird because go.
And so with that one.
Oh yeah, there's some really cool lilies that grow in there too.
Lilies, yeah.
So as soon as we learned that, we were just like, that seems like a silly thing. It doesn't make sense. Even though with any of these, we want to preserve the terrain as much as possible. We're not talking about clear cutting a bunch of trees or anything that we want these to really fit into the landscape. You got to take some trees out where it's dense, but Joe Smith is largely pretty open. You can work with the landscape, but upon learning that there's wetland and sensitive species, it just seems to not make sense on top of the fact of what's going on with the
recreation corridor.
Right, the recreation corridor. It could make that more challenging, and we don't want to do that. And so it just seems, as far as the grant money there, right?
Hey, quick question. The parcel to the north that's in green, that's labeled Indian Peaks Open Space, is that owned by the town, or what's the deal with that
parcel? That's what we're referring to, Rhea. That's part of, that's like, I call it the backside of Joe Smith Park.
Because the area along School Road next to the Caribou Room, just west of the Caribou Room, is like nothing special. Like if you were to put that, I know you want Chipeta Park, of course, for a variety of reasons, but if you wanted to put anything anywhere, I would think right along School Road, directly west of the Caribou Room, wouldn't impact any of the sensitive habitats, and could be a location.
Let me just clear up the confusion for a second, just make sure there's not any.
Yeah.
Chipeta Park's for the pump track, and this discussion is for the downhill course. So we're actually not thinking about the pump track up there, just for clarity. This would be for a downhill
so there's
course.
two. I'm sorry. So I guess I wasn't paying attention. So there's 2 different bike parks you guys want to put in.
That's right. And because originally we would have loved to just kind of put them together, but Chipeta Park just made a ton of sense for a pump track.
Right.
And then it was like, well, there's no gradient at Chipeta Park for downhill mountain biking. You got to get really creative. So that's why we had to go start looking at a separate parcel for that. And the terrain really does help when we have some downhill gradient, that's sort of that is necessary. And then beyond that, it can become more or less ideal for certain types of downhill parks. So I just wanted to clear that up. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Thank you.
So Joe Smith, it is, I guess, still on the table, but it's got more challenges around it. And so the new property, we were actually at the youth advisory board yesterday, and we were looking out the window, and we had talked about this property and walked this site, and we were able to see it really well because we were in the library. And are we referring it to it as the Wingate property?
Yeah, yep. That's what it's called right now.
So that property has downhill gradient built in. So it actually makes the building a little easier in that way because there's a lot less work to do. In terms of making the features interesting, you're working with the terrain quite well. But I'm going to let Nikki talk to sort of what is going on there and what the deal is with that property and some of the features that make it unique relative to wanting to look at and say, well, this could potentially be a decent portion of land, and we want to make sure that it's land that isn't in the future something that makes sense to be used for development of town buildings or something like that of that nature, I think is really important.
So the map that you're seeing on the screen is wrong. Our parcels on this map are the two that Miranda's got her arrows hovering over now.
There's three.
There's three.
So this
Sorry.
really large parcel on the south side is not ours. There was a little miscommunication there with the designer here. So it's a small little parcel, this really square one, and then the one to the east. Those three combined, though, were donated, given to town by Mary Wingate when she passed away.
So we now own those lands, and it's got a conservation easement on it. So we cannot build any facility on that piece of land. So we are limited on what we can do with it, which makes it a kind of the project that we're talking about now makes it kind of appealing to this project because we can't really do anything else with this land, other than trails and things like that. So the other part of that is that there are already social trails that go through this area, and some of them actually connect up to Big Springs, and they connect up into the West Magnolia area. So what we could do with this, potentially with putting it into this area, is to kind of eliminate some of the social trail thing that's happening and really focus people on the trail that is. So we're not impacting the environment as much. I see this as an opportunity to, when we put a trail in up there for the mountain bikers, people aren't going to want to do bad things where you have mountain bikes coming through and other people utilizing that area.
And some of that's like what you were saying to me is like you have issues that you're aware of people just camping in that
Yeah.
zone, right?
Yep.
And
So we
causing
have-
problems in that way for you.
Yeah, so we have camping that happens there. We have people that are illegally trespassing through there to try and get to West Magnolia to camp out or whatever they're doing. So if we put something there where there's kind of people keep an eye on it, we're less likely to have people trying to have campfires and camping and kids just hanging out in the woods or whatever they're trying to do. So it is kind of to me, this is probably the best site because we can hook it into some Forest Service trails. And the Forest Service would love for us to try and do something with the trails that are already in, kind of, if you're looking at the map at the far east end of the Wingate property, it connects right into a big parcel of Forest Service land that's off of Valley View Drive. That's where we have a lot of social trails, a lot of camping, a lot of problems with that spot. The Forest Service has already offered help and actually would love for us to do something with this to try and eliminate those social trails, eliminate the camping problem, eliminate the problem with trash that the campers are leaving behind up there. And so to me, this site makes the most sense. There's not a lot of, excuse me, sensitive environmental impacts in this area. There's not a wetland already there, and there's not a wetland or anything that we're gonna try and go through. There's, if there is a sensitive plant, we'll work the trail around it. And so, yeah, this area really, to me, makes the most sense. It's already connecting into trails that are already being used for this very purpose.
Can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
One more thing I'd like to add that I think is important and a benefit that's not bike related is that in any of these downhill courses, you got to have an up track. And that's for, you're only riding up it. So you're not bombing down it fast ever. And that's got to be signed well. And that's an important part of any of these because that's where you're riding your bike or you're pushing your bike up the hill if it's steeper and you got a big, heavy downhill mountain bike. And it also is an amazing walking trail. And so it creates a walking corridor. And we could thoughtfully think about, oh, well, let's put that where, you're not going to put it straight up where it's uncomfortable to walk. You're going to make a comfortable walking path. So it also is adds a walking corridor that doesn't really exist there today, other than riding your bike around the highway. And it also may, I don't know what'll happen with the user patterns, but it may reduce the bike traffic on the highway because you can ride down the little trail and you can ride up to get up towards West Magnolia, and that could be a safety thing, a good thing,
Yeah.
Just a little side benefit, if you will. Yeah.
If I were on the other side of the table, what's the con side of this site?
Yeah. So I think site-wise, one of the biggest cons that I see is identifying the parking challenges, and what happens there. One of the benefits we get out of it being close to town is you can still park at the places you would naturally park for mountain biking that people do. The user patterns are there. So you could park at the, most people park at the public parking area. And it's close enough that you could ride a downhill bike really reasonably from there. And that could be encouraged. We could say parking for the downhill is over here. So I think that's that's the primary challenge that I see in terms of congestion potential is parking. And then outside of that, this is relatively new to us. This property is on the table as an idea. And so we're actually looking forward to hearing some of the feedback that other people might have, relative to the negatives that might occur with this property. And I don't know a lot of the history. And, one of the good things about Joe Smith that Nikki knew is that the neighborhood there, to her knowledge and in her communication, was really excited to have something there. So that's wonderful. I don't know what that looks like over there. It's not too butted up against homes, thankfully, but that's another thing that we have to consider. NIMBYism for sure. We all have it, and it's justified for people for sure. So those are the things I see. Outside of that, I'd love to hear what other people might think are the negatives of that property. Now, of course, I want to hear the positives, but we know what those look like.
Yeah.
Great. Let's go around the circle with the board, and let's start this time with Rhea.
Hey, out of curiosity, the square parcel to the east or to the right, where Valley View and Peak View come together, is that Forest Service owned?
It is.
So are you suggesting to coordinate with the Forest Service to expand the trails over there? Would that help your cause?
Yes, that relationship has already been established with some of the group that was with us on our walkthroughs. So
Mostly the NATO folks, right?
The NATO folks, yep. And Josh Harrod also had a relationship and was saying how he had talked with them already and they were excited to work with us on this.
And so the Forest Service wants to maintain management of that parcel because I guess it's so surrounded by the town. I'm just wondering the future, maybe the town can somehow own that parcel and manage it themselves. So it's not so much of a headache for the Forest Service, but.
I agree with you, Rhea. They actually call me in whenever there is a camper or something like that in that area. They have asked me to watch out for camping. And when I see that, I'm the one that cleans up the campsites. I have never seen the Forest Service come in and clean up that area.
Anyways, maybe something to talk with them about eventually, although it sounds like they're not closed off to doing the trails. I've never been on this parcel, so I don't have any big, problems, or I really don't know what's over there. I think parking, if it becomes super popular, where are people going to park? Are people going to try to park at the fake tree up there, which is our cell phone tower? Probably not. It's probably locked off, but I think yeah, those are my sort of my general questions.
That was actually where we parked when we had our meeting and went to the site.
I,
So
I wonder too, like, and because the site's a bit new, Nikki, you might be able to speak to this a little bit, and if you're not ready to, it's fine. Is there potential too to like clear out a little bit of that site for extra parking?
I think we'd have to talk to the Forest Service
Okay.
about it. Yep.
And then the other thing is you had mentioned, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you'd mentioned the idea that it could be beneficial for wildfire mitigation, just being in there already.
Absolutely. I mean, we can, try and monitor things that are already down, and to kind of take out some of the ladder fuel that's happening in that area. Part of the reason that we've never even, I've not even had my boots on the ground on this site, and part of that reason is, because it's thick with blowdown. So the potential of getting in there and actually doing some cleanup and, making it look nice and pretty and stuff, yeah, that definitely exists. Whenever you put a trail in, you're also creating a mini fire break. And maybe it's not a full-on mitigation, but just a mini, someplace where the fire department can get in and access the area. That's always beneficial, so they're not climbing over tree stumps and things like that, trying to get through to the fire. I think fire-wise speaking, that we would benefit the area.
Great, thanks, Nikki. And Andrew, do you have any questions?
No, well, just one about that map. Can you put the map back up again with the parcels on it? You had said, I heard you mention that the map wasn't correct, but I only see three parcels there, right? There's that
There's
one.
4, Andrew. This little one is its own separate parcel. So you see
Okay,
where
and
my
that,
mouse is, like this one, and this one are ours. It's this big parcel here that is not.
okay, so it would basically connect from where that kind of bend is and peak to peak, and then kind of they just come together at a point right there. So it'd have to go through there, and then that street, does that front on Highway 119 or is that set back?
It's set back slightly, this little parcel here.
Okay.
It's this larger one that fronts on the highway.
Okay, but that larger one you said is not?
Right. So we'd
Okay.
be looking at using these, and then to your point, yeah, a little tiny slit here, and maybe some sort of easement with the owners of this parcel, but it's still in the Wingate family. They're just
Okay.
keeping this one.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to envision which parcel was not applied. So I don't have a whole, I mean, again, yeah, I haven't honestly ever been there because of all the points you guys have talked about. It's pretty thick. I don't know how the neighbors would feel, but I imagine people, I have no idea what people would say. But it's out of the other sites, this one seems to make the most sense. But I could also see it, having public opinion go the other way. But as far as connecting to Magnolia, and certainly with the Forest Service over that Valley View lot, I'll call it, if they're willing to, allow kind of trails to go in there as well, it seems like this is a good option. But that's all I've got. Yeah, I don't. It's I don't. It would be interesting to see like a topo of this site with, I guess, the proposed trails overlaid on the topo. I know that might be hard to pull together. I don't know if there's topos of the existing.
It's actually pretty doable. We can like go walk it with a GPS watch on the contours of it and
Yeah.
using a map and have an idea. We just haven't had a chance to because it was like it came on our radar pretty quickly here, and we are like,
Sure. Yeah.
but we can.
Yeah.
We definitely would want to. That'd be. This one would have another round, I suppose, of coming through and meeting with everybody. I imagine, right?
Yeah, we're not looking for any vote or not a 4 on this second one. I think it's just this is truly the discussion side of this.
Okay. That's all I've got. Thank
I think
you.
maybe one thing we would be looking for slightly is just to say, Yeah, we're interested in looking at it some more versus closing off the idea. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing we're looking for.
Okay.
Or if we come to something on this that we don't know about that we totally close it off, then that makes sense too, you know?
Yeah,
Like we did with Joe Smith.
that's all I've got right now. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Danielle, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you. I think that this location is much more appealing than the Joe Smith one, especially since we have some trails happening already, along with some riffraff that we have been trying to problem solve, and the fire mitigation. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to look at all of those and do something for the town. I like the terrain for this idea too, and I'm excited to see what the neighbors think of it and the topograph map and development of it. I'm for it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Danielle. And Ron, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, this is a little bit removed, but at some point in time, there's going to have to be a second exit out of the Big Springs area. And that's been in the design works for 15 years or so. And I don't know, but could you tie any portion of what you want to do with this kind of project into the design of the new road that's going to have to go out of the Big Springs area because there is no second exit? And our fire chief, I mean, our police chief said that he felt this was the biggest single problem facing the town was this exit. Well, I don't see why you couldn't get double duty out of the road and have a downhill on that.
So Ron, the proposed exit for Big Springs is actually off of Doe Trail and you can't see it, this driveway. It wouldn't be anywhere near the proposed site for this downhill.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Now, I will say, like, if there's, if we get the fire chief out there to walk it with us, or when we're, I don't know, further along, if it's something they could, well, that would be good. There's no reason we couldn't put a trail big enough to, get something in there or an exit or something like that. Like, I think we're open to putting that into the plans if it at all makes sense.
Real serious bikers spend 4 or 5 hours on a trip, so you might want to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Great, thanks, Ron. And Tanya, do you have any questions or comments?
Hi. I love this location. I am very familiar with it. Not necessarily that spot, but I have walked it many times because it's part of the Foresight 2 agenda, and maybe not the town-owned part but the national forest part is, then that's the land that goes from Valley View all the way down to the Ned Hub. So yeah, that's a little bit to the west of where I'm very familiar with that land in there. Imagine it's similar topography. And I think it's a great location except for the parking. And so the idea would be hopefully to expand that fake tree parking area enough that you get 12 cars there, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, signage in town for people, because people do just park in town and go to West Mag or go to East Mag. East Mag has great network of trails that connect up towards West Mag. It would be really cool to somehow connect this with trail. I don't know if it's possible. There's a bit of private property interjecting, but it's okay to go on peak view for a little bit. Why I like it, the riffraff, the trash, mountain bikers tend to be cleaner than people camping in the woods, and they keep an eye on things for fires. There is a lot of blown down. What I will say from when I walked the area that's a little bit to the east of that in the national forest, it's a lot of really terrible lodgepole blowdown, and then these amazing pockets of beautiful ponderosas, and also a lot of every now and then like these really nice aspen areas. And so it would be really good. I know we're not even anywhere near that, but to not cut that areas, don't cut the aspens and the ponderosas, but do get the lodgepoles and work through the terrain that way so that you can maintain the beneficial parts of the forest because they do exist in there. Even though it's mostly blow down and there are some areas that are really nice that would benefit from a cleaning up. So I also like that. Now would it be real? I know it's going to tie in. I hopefully would it tie into the highway so that people can bike from the highway and connect to the trail? Because you said it doesn't connect to the highway. There is no highway frontage.
I think that Andrew was just talking about this really small portion, Trustee Corvallon.
Yeah, so
it's
there is no
there.
highway. What
Yeah.
about the other blue part that's just to the west of that? Yeah, is that?
That is the Wingate family trust. They still own this, and so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to talk to them.
Not
It's
necessarily
just that this is
parking,
not
but at least to
town.
have a trail that would then trail connect. So that it would, because that would be the key, I think, is for it to be able to connect via trail from town.
I also think if we didn't plan one would get socially made.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. But it would be nice to have it more like sanctioned.
Right, exactly. That's what I agree with you for
Piss
sure.
anybody off.
See if we can get that to happen as part of it.
Yeah, it would be really cool. I like this better than up by Joe Smith or the I was agreeing with Rhea that the land west of the Caribou Room isn't very exciting, but it's also not very exciting for you'd have to make all your hills because it's basically flat. So this definitely has terrain. It checks all the boxes. It's close enough to town that you could, a mom could sit with the little one at Chipeta Park and the bigger kid could go over here, so I like that. There really isn't much I don't like. I just want people to be, when it's that time, to be mindful of the few features that are nice in this area of, ecologically. Because when we walked this area for Foresight 1 or Foresight 2, you have to, you don't have to, but we like to mark areas not to cut and areas to cut. And there surprisingly are areas that are worthy of not cutting. So just to realize that when it's that time. Otherwise, I would definitely say this is a good spot for what you want to do.
Great, thank you. And Steve Roundtree.
I tend to agree. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity. It feels like access from the downhill side in town, it's going to happen. So having that part of the plan. Otherwise, it feels like there's still more questions than answers.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of opportunity in that area. It kind of ties in with people that are going up into that zone for West Meg anyways. There's some parking options. I think it's cool that if it can tie in with the sidewalk to town.
Right.
It really seems like a cool location for something like this. So it feels like plowing forward, getting more answers on all the questions.
Yeah.
And figuring out if it really works. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I only have a couple comments real quick. I like Site 2 and Site 3 because when I think of the second site that you're talking about, you're also talking about access to parking. And
Like the Joe Smith sort of
the Joe
site.
Smith.
Okay, yeah, that
So
definitely
you're
has.
by the elementary school, you're next to Wild Bear. Wild Bear's talking about trails that would link it to town. So I would love to see you continue exploring both
Sure.
options and presenting them back when you have more information.
Yeah.
Only because it's they're both great locations. I've been at Mary Wingate's. I've been up behind her house. It would be a great spot, but the other one would be a great spot. And it would also tie into Mud Lake and so many other things. So I think either would be really cool opportunities. And I would just love to see both explored further.
Sure.
Yeah. And Tom or Jim, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'll go first. I love this property for a lot of reasons, but on Saturday we did a wildfire thing and they did all the modeling. They said there's only 2 ways out of Big Springs. And I said, no, they said there's only one. I said, you got 2. And they said, oh no, this would, if there were a fire, the area where that antenna is would be engulfed. Every model shows that going up fast. So I don't think you're going to approach on anything there. the people in the back of Big Springs have to get out. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But I think you got a lot of vertical, and I totally agree with Trustee Corville in that you got, you're gonna have to cut carefully, but there's a lot of down wood in there, and I think it would really, I think we'd solve a lot of problems. I just wish that there weren't so many nice species in Joe Smith Park, because I'm amazed when I go up there sometimes to see, even with snow, how many people use that. You can follow the tracks. It's I think we're going to do something special with that space. We just don't know for sure what it is yet.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. And do we have any public comment? Nope. Hearing and seeing none, and with no decision to make on this other than whether or not the board supports the idea of looking at it more. I think you pretty much have our direction on that. I don't think that we need to do a vote on it.
Yep.
It looks like everybody is in support of some idea of that. So,
yeah.
All right.
So great. Thank you so much for being here and presenting that information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll hang out and help answer.
Both on ProSap.
Yeah, I'll stick around for this as well, since I'll be involved with it more.
Yeah. So the next thing on the list of to-dos today is we are talking about our trails master plan. So we've been kind of going around, hanging out at farmers markets, going to the youth advisory board, talking about the trails that exist in town already, the trails that maybe don't exist, places where trails need maintenance, places where trails need to be more defined. Right now, Public Works, my crew is kind of going through walking trails. Trails were marked out by volunteers more than 15 years ago. So a lot of those trail markers are blown down, or maybe they've grown up, and so you have to look up in the tree to find the trail marker. Some of them have just been stolen and they're lost. You can't find them anymore. So we've been asking for public feedback and comments on where you would like to see trails improved, where maybe a trail shouldn't be and it is, or where a trail isn't and it should be. Maybe you have a spot in mind where you've seen that there is a social trail that has happened, and maybe we need to look at maintaining that as an actual town trail. Some of the comments that were put forth to us at the youth advisory were about the access from the high school down through Old Town into town, and specifically the trail that comes off of, what's that road? County Road 130?
Yeah.
County Road 130, there's a section of trail that goes down from the road down into Old Town. It gets washed out every year. Several years ago, we had volunteers come in and helped us put in some kind of a water diversion tactics and try and maintain it, but it gets overloaded with sand from Boulder County, sanding the roads and things like that. So that's kind of an area that the kids were concerned about. They had a lot of good feedback for me on areas around the elementary school. They'd like to see things connect from Mud Lake to the rink through Joe Smith Park, to make access for kids around in that area a little safer. They did talk about the trails that go from the elementary school down into town, and how can we make it so that a kid never has to cross the road unsafely. There is a section of trail that is actually right across the street from the community center, and it is right off of 6th and Navajo. And the neighbors just kind of throw a pallet over the ditch all the time to make a ditch crossing. It's not our ditch, it's CDOT's ditch. So if we want a better ditch crossing than a pallet, like what would I have to do to try and get CDOT to help us out with the ditch crossing right there? But I'm really looking for feedback, and it's not just me. ProSab is also looking for feedback on trails and how we can improve the existing trail structure around town. What would you like to see happen? For us, we also are talking about trying to get some kind of a grant going on at the rink area. And what would that look like for a recreation corridor? Connecting the rink to Mud Lake, like I said, into Joe Smith Park area. What would that look like? Don't really know, but we're really looking for public comment and feedback on trails and what you think of the trails and sidewalks around town.
Thanks, Nikki. And let's go around. Oh, no, sorry. Let's go around the circle again and see if there are any questions. And this time, let's start with Andrew.
No, I don't have any questions. It's a lot to think about. I'm just kind of going through my, the places I go and thinking about the kids, and I'm just, I need to, I think obviously there's not, like you said, you've been developing the plan, over many years, and are looking for feedback. So I'm just kind of thinking about areas, and interested to hear what other people have to say, but I don't have a whole lot to add right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Danielle.
I'm not as familiar with all of the trails around here. The only one that I really can think of is down by the creek by Wolf Tongue and between Old Town. I know that some of that is marked as private property and there are signs up, so that might need some more clarity. There are some really nice trails along the creek there. That's the only one I can really think of. Otherwise, the others, nice maintenance on them. I'm definitely not as familiar with them as other people are, but it sounds wonderful to have them taken care of and improved. That's all I have.
Thank you. And Ron.
I would like to ask a question. There's often been talk over many years about a river walk behind the businesses on the south side of First Street. Has that been considered or included or thought about as far as your trails in terms of connecting walking paths through town?
No, and that's because I had a lot of resistance from the people that own housing on the second streets, or sorry, on the First Street side. That's when Ron, I put the trail in and improved the trail that goes behind the hotel on that side in order to just put something in down there. That would have to be done by the DDA in the downtown development. If that's what the DDA wanted to do, they would have to look at putting a trail in on that side.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, Ron, I'm not opposed to the idea. I really do like it.
I think it's something the DDA should pursue. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ron. And Tanya.
Yeah, I would also the Riverwalk, I know we're not talking about that, but is that town property that would go along those houses?
No.
Or what about cutting it up by the apothecary then and just like half a Riverwalk? I mean,
Yeah,
The
none of that
city
is.
street behind the apothecary, which goes all
What's
the way
that?
over to Busey Bruce. There's one
Yeah.
property owner right in the middle that owns the property into the center of the river, and they are the single sole holdup of having a river walk.
So they actually own the land, the actual land.
Yeah, they own the land right into the center of
I
the
didn't know you
creek.
could learn. I didn't know you could own land and along a river. But anyway, well, I'm all for Riverwalk, but with to your points, the 2 points. One was, I mean, with the rink to Mud Lake, there is basically a trail from Mud Lake that goes almost to the rink. It's got like a little gate sort of thing that the open space has put up, so it might be worthy of asking them if that gate could be removed or sign a better signage, or but there's a pretty clear trail that connects to the rink from Mud Lake, and you just have to cross the street and you're like, 50 feet from the rink. So I think with most of the trails, they do all exist, like it's just a matter of, like you said, improving the signage on them, because, or like, fixing where it's been washed out. Obviously to the high school, it would be nice, and I know that's all CDOT, but to have a trail along the side of the road so that kids aren't walking on in the highway. And I know when I go to Mud Lake, I go to the community center and then I take that little trail that gets up to Forest Road, and I just take that. It seems like the easiest way physically to get up that hill. And so I don't know if there would be any advantage to signing it that way, because then once you're up top there, it's a good place for a crosswalk, to ask CDOT, because to put a crosswalk at the community center is a tough one because it's the hill, people are going kind of fast. And that's where people cross. They go down all those trails or the road and they're crossing there. And it's a terrible place to cross because people do go really fast and you can't just stop, especially if there's ice. So up by Forest Road and the highway seems like a great place to try to petition to get a crosswalk. If that was an access that, like it's not a trail, but it's a really good way to get up there. That's what I do. I think it's the easiest way. And there's also these amazing trails that zigzag down to Caribou, and the bottom of Caribou is also a good place-ish for a crosswalk. But if we're talking about safety for kids crossing the street or anybody, there needs to be some kind of crosswalk or at least some sort of signage saying slow down, people crossing, because you got to cross the street at some point. But I think the Caribou problem is all national forest, and so it's out of your jurisdiction. But those are my thoughts. And then, and to pursue the idea of a river trail, I don't know. Obviously, if there's somebody who owns that land who says no, there's not a whole lot you can do. So I see your hands are tied. So it's good to know that.
One thing from the ProSat perspective, being on the board, I will say we're more than happy to kind of collaborate with you guys on Riverwalk or different things that make sense that might be helpful to have us involved with in whatever way makes sense.
But if this property owner is and they're right before the apothecary or right after Ron's lot, are they like, where is this property?
It's behind Busey Brews, behind the apothecary.
Oh, it's behind Busey Brews. So there's not a house or anything
The
there.
property owner, the property owner is the co-op.
Oh, they were resistant as well. Yep.
It seems like they might be like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like reasonable. Okay.
Sometimes change is hard, and so sometimes you get resistance from people, even though it doesn't really make sense to everyone else in the long run. Looking at the big picture,
doesn't make any sense.
But potentially, if we keep picking, eventually maybe somebody would accept the idea of the change that is inevitably happening.
I'm gonna try to find out why. Like, what's the fear? Is it like, oh, their land's going to be stolen from them, or what? All right. Well, I know we have a big agenda, so I'm done talking. But thanks.
Hi, I just wanted to jump in really quick and just pull out that the Riverwalk is in the approved plan for our spending for the DDA. So I did just want to, let that be known and make sure so that if you all did want to move forward with that and there was some movement from the co-op, that could be something that's already been identified as something we would like to spend TIF funds on. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that.
Great, thanks, Kate. And Steve Roundtree, do you have any questions or comments?
I'll agree with the comment that change is hard for some people. I think it's a massive undertaking, but I think it's tying together so many of the different spaces in town. When I think of some of the really cool things in Nederland that if you don't know where they are, you don't know where they are,
Yeah.
right? It isn't an easy town to navigate and find things. And just for example, like Santa Fe, New Mexico, the way that they've tied in access to their public lands from town, it's amazing. You can go there as a tourist, jump on a bike, navigate around, walk around, find everything. Fruita, Colorado has the same kind of vibe. And I think that welcoming feel that you get when there's signage and access to open space, it makes people feel welcome. And I think that that would be a really amazing transition to see happen in Nederland. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Rhea? Did we lose Rhea? Okay. Okay. Maybe she'll pop back on. Um, I don't really have much to say about this particular one. I think that it would be great if we can discuss it further, and I hope that it will come up in a work session where we can meet with ProSab and the DDA and the BOT and all the other boards and discuss it further, because it's obviously something we should all be thinking about together. And just to throw in there with wayfinding, we're working on signage, so it'd be awesome to be collaborating with others on signage, because maybe we have a way to do that. And hopefully next month we'll have a presentation on that.
Cool.
Tom?
Yeah, two questions. Number one, I'm really curious if there's a summary from what you learned at Farmers Market on Saturday morning, because I participated and a lot of people did. And number two, if you have designs on Stinky Gulch tying around to the highway.
Was that your comment? That was a good comment. I actually, so I set up for the event and I tore down for the event. And then yesterday I got the opportunity to read through some of the comments that were put onto the map with the kids at the Youth Advisory Board. There is no summary yet. We're looking for public feedback from all of the different boards. We'll be participating in many of the farmers markets. The ProSab group will be there also at our town cleanup day, June 4th, don't forget. And need volunteers. If anybody can volunteer. Thank you, Jim Reese. So by the end of the summer, or maybe even mid-August, maybe, we would have some kind of a conclusion as to what trails we're looking at actually focusing our efforts on, and where we can focus for public works. And from a public works standpoint, I can't do it all, right? So what do I want to add to sidewalk plowing? What do I want to add to our regular maintenance routine? And we'll go from there.
One suggestion, when I was in the years I was in Chicago, there was a group I loved on Saturday mornings. It's called Windy City Explorers. And there's 56 neighborhoods, and an expert would take you through the neighborhood and explain stuff that you would never in a million years know. I would suggest that we do some Saturday morning things where we go out and walk. And I think you'll get some amazing feedback in real time. And I think it'll get people out for the few months that we can get out and walk.
Awesome. Walks with Nikki. I am in Chipeta Park on a very regular basis and kind of walking through town. Not as regular now that I'm manager, but every Sunday you'll see me walking around town for sure, if not more. And when I am around town, I'm always looking for feedback on everything. Not just trails, but also how I can improve, what other people would like to see in town as far as parks are concerned. What are we lacking? And I get a lot of comments about us lacking, senior exercise type activities, those kinds of things. So that's coming. And I'm looking at that too.
Hashtag walks with Nikki.
Yeah.
And tweet it.
Yeah.
Tom, do you know how the Windy City Explorers, was that a separate organization from the city at all that was doing that, or how did that?
It was a meetup.
Okay.
And it got to be huge. but it was, I got into neighborhoods I never in a million years would have gone into.
Tom, I'm writing it down. I think that is actually a really good suggestion.
And then doesn't have to be all on Nikki too, you know? Maybe it could happen organically a bit in that way.
Cool. Because
Point of feedback.
talk about birds. We'll talk about plants. We'll talk about all kinds of parks related things. And then we'll
And
get
there's a
people
related
outside.
one I want to do with Lee Settle called Pins I Never Knew Were There.
Oh, nice. Lovely. I love it. Yeah, so we'll be looking for feedback for this on this subject for the next couple of months for sure. And if you can talk to your people, whoever it is that you know, and encourage them to get a hold of myself, ProSab, Miranda, whoever it is that they can get a hold of. Love to hear your feedback on our trails and sidewalks that are around town right now. And I'm not the type of person that's going to read on Netheads or Facebook or something like that. So if you really have some maintenance thing that needs to happen, you need to get a hold of Town Hall or myself directly, because if it's on Facebook, I'm not going to read about it. Thank you. Side note.
Great, thanks, Nikki. Thank
Yes.
you, Tom. Jim, do you have any questions or comments? No? Great. Do we have any public? I wish I could read those names.
We
from here,
have
but I can't.
Judy. If Judy had anything she wanted to chime in on. Otherwise, no.
I'm going to guess she's here for public.
No, thanks.
Thanks, Judy.
Great, thank you. That wraps up that agenda item. We'll be talking about it, it sounds like, for a couple of months yet. And I look forward to hearing more, and especially hearing more in the work session. So,
Excellent.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
having
you.
us. Thank you for your time. And yep, we'll hopefully see you all June 4th at Town Cleanup Day. I need volunteers.
To make sure everyone has my email and phone number and you can reach out at any time.
Great, thank you. So since we're in the discussion items, let's just keep going in the discussion items for now and wrap those up. Jim, are you presenting parking in Nederland? Or would you like us to go through the mural hanging celebration real quick with Kate first?
I'm ready.
You ready?
Sorry. Now I'm really ready.
Yeah,
Ready.
I think
Ready.
Miranda is
Ready,
going
ready.
to do the main
ready.
presentation and I'm going to
I
chime in.
think,
Okay.
I think I'm ready. All right. We talked about this actually last meeting. We asked you for some really kind of open-ended feedback on parking in the central business district and just kind of your parking thoughts. There is a planning commission subcommittee that was assigned by the board of trustees, and their job initially was to do parking in the central business district. But from there, it's kind of morphed into parking in general. And so today we offer 4 recommendations and we'd love to hear your feedback. So I'm just going to run through them. And then at the end, we're happy to talk about any of them further. So to start, that subcommittee does consist of Jim Reese, who is the vice chair of the Planning Commission, Linda Glasser, who's the planning commissioner, Cynthia Baki, who is the deputy zoning administrator, and then myself. So just kind of a quick overview. So what we're looking at is a moratorium for parking requirements. We have some additional developable lots that we want to talk to you about. We have paid parking and then wayfinding and signage. So let me get into recommendation number 1. It's a moratorium. What we are recommending are 2 moratoriums. The first is to do a 2-year moratorium on the way in which off-street parking spaces are calculated in the central business district. We have seen quite a few variances come forward because people can't do the 1 space for every 300 square feet in their business. And so those have been reduced dramatically. So giving us enough time to really look into this further, we feel like a moratorium is appropriate. We also are recommending a moratorium of the central or the commercial parking fund. So as a reminder, if you can't meet the off-street parking code, one option is to pay $2,500 per space into the commercial parking fund. To date, only 1 person has done that for a total of 2 spaces. So there's $5,000 in that account. So the feeling is put a moratorium on that as well, and we'll kind of assess whether that is kind of realistic moving forward. So that's recommendation number 1.
Miranda,
Yeah,
do you
please.
mind if I chime in as we go?
Of course,
Yeah.
please do.
So for those of you listening at home, I'm Jim Reese, the on the planning commission, and I was tasked with or volunteered to jump in and try and solve something that's been tried to be solved about 20 times before. So you're probably not going to hear any new ideas, but basically we're just going to keep presenting ideas that we think are workable until we come to a solution with the problem. Unfortunately, in town, there's a lot of competing priorities, and you're going to see some examples. I'm sure people on this board are going to say, hey, we have designs for some of those spaces for other things. But again, I'm just focused on parking. So I had a narrow focus. We felt like when we discussed it, that it was not equally enforced. And I've heard this often in listening in on BOT meetings when parking has been talked about, that unfortunately, there's been a lot of folks that have come before the board, and from what I could see, almost universally, when people have asked for an exception, it's been granted. One of them recently was for a large amount of revenue that would have went into that we could have used for purchasing additional property or paving or different things. So right now, I think it would be very hard pressed for us to say, hey, new business that's coming in, you got to meet this requirement when we haven't been equally enforcing it. That's all I have on this slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. All right. Recommendation number 2 is to develop lots throughout town. So let me just run through these really quick. The first is Chipeta Park. Obviously, there's that desire for a pump track, which we all agreed on tonight, but Chipeta doesn't necessarily get parked out very well. People park along the sides, they do this horseshoe thing, and you have this big gaping middle spot that really, if we maximize it better, we designated it through parking blocks or whatever Public Works recommends, we could maximize that space. So we'd like to do some formal parking there in Chipeta. We'd also recommend using the Old Town Shop lot as parking until the Board of Trustees has decided what is going to be used in that space. There is a resolution designating that as affordable housing. We're pretty far out from having the financial means to do so. So the feeling was until there was a commitment for that parcel, we could use it for parking.
Can you describe where the Old
Yeah.
Town Shop?
So I have a little map here on the next, if you can see this. So it's this yellow dot over here. So the Old Town Shop is by the fire department. Behind the trailers that are there, there's just a big empty lot. And that's where our old shop, Public Works shop, used to be.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next is to encourage people to park out Lakeview on the north side, all of Lakeview. Because if you head down all of Lakeview to Rodeo Court, we own that parcel. We already talked about it, Big Springs Park. We own that parcel, and we could possibly develop a portion of Big Springs Park to be parking. So this is kind of these long yellow strips here is what we're looking at, is parking out Lakeview and then a portion of that Big Springs Park. We also recommend the Nederland Community Center, really encouraging people through wayfinding to go to the Nederland Community Center. There is a trail that obviously comes down into town. It's currently unmaintained, so our recommendation would be to work with Public Works to ensure that that really was a maintained trail so people could use it all year long and come down from the community center. The parking behind Quick Mart on 3rd Street is actually public parking, but not necessarily signed very well. So signing that a little bit better to make sure people know as they come in, they could pull off right behind Quick Mart and park there. We also recommend West 1st Street on the south side from where kind of Catmandu and CenturyLink are, so right in front of Netternet. If we did some sort of pull-in parking versus the parallel parking that happens now, we could probably park out about 20 cars there. So that's from the RTD lot as you're heading towards Town Hall. You'd be on the south side. Right now people park parallel, and it's just not, there is enough room there to do some sort of kind of pull-in parking. And then the last one, or the last two really are navigating public-private partnerships, seeing if there are lands that we could enter into agreements with, or if town could purchase in order to create parking, because there are a lot of open, privately owned parcels. And then the last one we've talked about it a ton is parking garage at RTD. Trustee Blakemore has really championed this and is making a lot of calls between DRCOG and RTD. I'm really trying to work her network to demonstrate the urgency of this. RTD sentiment has always been you need to show that it's always used, that it's always parked out. So we're really hoping to drive people to park at RTD so that ideally they'll build a parking garage. Jim, got anything?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. This is again where we're talking about those competing priorities. So, you know, we keep talking about how parking, we need parking. We see it every time there's a festival, every time there's a NedFest or anything, that's going to just continue to be a growing need. On my list that didn't make this list, because since we started this in February, one of the recommendations that I was strongly pushing for was the Fisherman's Lot over by the skate park, but that was just directed to be used in other for another wetlands, I believe is what it was, by the board. So we took that off. But basically what we're trying to do is find opportunities to develop parking within walking distance on each end of town. And you know, so that when we get to the next couple slides, when we talk about signage, you know, you will be able to walk, you know, potentially 10 minutes, you know, from the farthest end to get here. Now, I've already been warned off about how, oh my gosh, you know, the people are going to come out if you try and use that old town shop spot for this. It's designated for affordable housing, but I'm going to tell you right now, that's probably not coming in the next 3 to 5 years. When that money drops out of the sky on a big infrastructure plan, then I'll be like, great, that's awesome. Let's build that affordable housing. Until then, it's sitting empty. We have within our capability of town to pave that and put some signage up. And I do not even know what the count is on how much additional parking that would be, but I assume it would be a lot. Do you know?
About 70 spaces.
Okay, I'm wrong.
If parked out correctly, that is the key part here.
That, and then the other end, the part that I saw was a great opportunity that I do not think would take away from the use of the town-owned land from Rodeo Court to the end of Lakeview Drive. If we were to just build that up a little bit and do slant parking, we were looking at as many as 70 to 80 spaces along there. So just on both ends of town right there, now you have the ability to park potentially 140 to 160 additional cars, which I think will be not a huge investment to get those up and running. I think that could be done in the next year to 2 years, which is why we recommended the 2-year moratorium on the parking fund. Was we think that we can see some of these things come to fruition in the next 2 years. And then we'll talk about funding here in the next slide. Thank you.
So the desire to push parking to the outskirts is kind of where we get into the paid parking. You know, we really feel like if we did a phased approach of paid parking and we started on First Street and just did the handful of spots that town owns on First Street, that may encourage someone to want to go park somewhere free, like the RTD parking lot. But if you don't, you can pay to park right there. We are recommending the first 15 minutes to 30 minutes free. That came from the parking survey. That seemed very important, that if we were to even entertain paid parking, to allow that quick in and out. So if you wanted to grab your deli sandwich, you could run in and grab it and then leave. That is our recommendation, is to do paid parking there. And then when the TIPS program was done for the sidewalks in the visitor center parking lot, to then turn that into paid parking as well. All in a desire to generate income that could help us create some of these developable lots and encourage people to park on the outskirts and walk into town. Jim?
Again, now, I'm going to tell you that this is not a new idea. And almost universally in the parking survey, people opposed paid parking. Almost equally, from the business owners, we got the desire to have more turnover on East First Street in front of their businesses, and lots of comments about that. I think we're getting to a point in our society where if you're going to be able to park and walk 30 feet to the store, you expect to pay for parking. You don't go down on Pearl Street and expect to get right in front of your business without paying for it. So you're either going to walk 3 blocks and search for parking, or you're going to pony up the money. And I think we're getting to that point. A lot of the reason why we're looking at this is not only turnover. We're looking at this as recommended as a phased in approach, starting with East First Street, but then moving on to the visitor center and making potentially one side and then the other side paid parking, because that is in the closest proximity to the main businesses in town. Everything else is within 10 minutes walking. Everything else we're recommending, you can park and walk 10 minutes, especially when we get some good signage up, which we'll talk about on the next slide. But the revenue that can be generated from these parking meters would be essential to being able to do things like fund, additional parking, maybe purchasing, on this map, we saw several places that were privately owned lots. One of them right next to the Stacy's Grove place there, right on the edge of town. That lot there, there's plenty of lots in town that if we could have the money and the resources to purchase, we could really have nice spot parking lots all over town. But the money that would come from that, we could definitely use for additional parking infrastructure and not tax our police department by paying for the enforcement of this parking, hiring somebody part-time to come in and do this during the time. So as much as this is probably not a desired result for our town, sometimes you got to make the hard choices. And I'm going to say the same thing to the BOT. There's going to be a lot of pushback, and there'll probably be people come out when a few more people attend those meetings. But I'm going to say the same things. You got to make hard choices, and there's competing priorities. And so if you want to get additional parking, you have to sometimes bite the bullet and say, well, we're going to make it. If you want to be in close proximity, you're going to have to pay the piper to get there. So thank you very much. I'll wait till the next slide now.
Thanks, Jim.
This is Cynthia, and it's something that Ron Mitchell has been talking about for the entire time I've worked for the town. And he had talked about the high cost of free parking, Donald Shoup's book, which I have. And so many of the studies just show that it does encourage turnover. And oftentimes funding from parking goes to create other programs in towns. So they serve a component for a low cost component. And I think that in order to encourage that regular turnover, I think to keep things moving, keep the businesses happy, and phasing in the approach where it's starts small and it gives the opportunity to look at a pilot program and make any changes kind of as it moves forward, or decide it doesn't work. But I think there's a lot of benefit to it, as much as I don't know that anyone of us in the subcommittee necessarily loves the idea of paid parking, but I think the reality of it is so practical, it makes a lot of sense. That's it for me.
Thanks, Cynthia. All right, and our last recommendation, which you all are very familiar with, but it's walkability, it's signage, it's wayfinding. So what we're looking for is Trails Master Plan. We just talked about it. It's really important to look at a trails network system. If we're gonna park people all over town, they also need to know how to get where they want to go. And so in addition, you all are working on wayfinding, that continued collaborative effort of signing these parking lots, signing those trails, helping to ensure people, when they come, they could park anywhere. They could park on the north, east, southwest side and know exactly how to get to where they're going. So we'd like to continue those collaborative efforts with you all as we work on through the parking. Jim?
And I just wanted to draw a distinction of what we were talking about, that potentially, think those you are here boards that you see at Waterworld or at the amusement parks, something on the wall right there at the visitor center that had an overview map of town, maybe something over at Chipeta Park, maybe something at a couple other key areas of town that would be a map showing, those graphic depictions that showing where the main parking was, where you can get to. And then the signage would be additional street signage and sidewalk signage that would direct people once they got to those outer lots, hey, and boy, wouldn't it be great if it came together in conjunction with Nikki's new trails, that we could kind of put together and improve some of these trails to where they could, have a little fun adventure on the way and have some walking paths and things like that. But we think that all of this together could solve this parking problem. I mean, it's a difficult problem. Short-term rentals was a difficult problem. There's no easy problems or they'd all be solved. So I'm just gonna, these are what we have to offer. They're probably not new, but this is our humble fare. And we would like the DDA to jump on board with us and hopefully work in partnership, maybe with funding on some of the development of some of these additional lots. I know that you guys have a project in the works across from the shopping center over there and in front of the old German restaurant. But I would love to see us, do several of those things in development of these additional lots. Thank you.
So similar to Trails Master Plan and Pump Track, we're running this through the different boards and commissions. My dates are off. So today is the 11th. Don't be alarmed. I will fix this. But we're going to run through all the boards and commissions. We won't actually bring this before the Board of Trustees until July. It's really important for us to hear your feedback so we can modify our recommendations if and where needed. So our last slide is, what feedback do you have for us?
Great, thanks, Miranda and Jim. And let's start with Andrew.
Yeah, parking and lots of information there. I'm not against paid parking in town. I do believe it will help in turnover, and I just think town gets busier and busier every month. And certainly with the economic engines of Boulder and lots of people moving into the area for biotech and technology and just all of the things that the Front Range attracts people, and people moving to Nederland and coming to Nederland. I think we need to make it easier to park, and certainly identifying and developing actual more parking, either parking lots or parking areas is really important. And it's something that I definitely like to would like to see happen. So yeah, I think just continuing to look at the different areas. I know that lot next to Stacy's, I think I've talked with him at least about that lot specifically. And I know he's got a pretty good relationship with the owner. He might have even right of first refusal on that lot, but I'm not sure where he's at with it now. And that would certainly be worth having another conversation. But I think, is it Doc Mauer, Ron, if I'm not mistaken?
It's Chris Maher, and
Chris Mauer.
he does have an option to buy the property.
Yeah. So I know we did look at that and have some conversations with Stacy, and he was not really receptive to that being any, and we even kind of framed it as stopgap temporary parking. But I think he had some plans for that. And now where he's at with that now, I'm not sure. So certainly identifying, those other areas that you had on the graphic there. I think those are all places where, I don't know how Neternet feels, but certainly increasing signage and getting parking wherever we can is important. So that's all I've got. It's whatever I can do to help. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Danielle, do you have any questions or comments?
I like the idea of paid parking. I like that the point was brought up that down in Boulder, you can't really expect not to have it and get to where you want to be close up. The locations for proposed parking, I think, are wonderful. I am excited to see that town is changing. I do know that, yes, as mentioned, change is hard for some people. If we can do things that are this beneficial now and integrate it into agendas and get people used to the idea, the sooner the better. Yeah, I think this is looking good. I don't have a whole lot more to say about it, but looking forward to more. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Ron?
Thank you. There's quite a few things I would like to say about this. I'm really glad that this study was done and the planning board did it. And I would want people to know what my immediate plans are going to be. But I want to preface it before you tell you that you should understand the value of a parking space. If a parking space on First Street turns over 8 times in a day, and the person spends $50 wherever they go individually, you have $400 of revenue for that one day. And then if you have maybe 20 days out of the month where you get that amount, or 20 days out, or 20 days out of the month, or maybe 2/3 of the year, that turnover, your revenue is roughly equivalent to $300,000. That's the value of that particular parking space. So when a skier or an employee or somebody who's going to go hiking parks all day long right on First Street, the town just lost $800 and the business community just lost $800. So I'm very much, and have been for a long time. Sorry, I'm hard of hearing. I didn't quite understand what Tanya said about my comments, but yes, I've been in favor of it, and I've handed out the book, The High Cost of Free Parking, to numbers of people. I bet I bought 15 copies and give them to board members over the years. And it is, and when you start to compute it and you look at it, it makes a lot of sense. And of course, nobody wants to pay for something that they got for free for 40 years. So I'm very glad that you're starting to support the idea of paid parking and how it works, and taking heed of Donald Shoup's recommendations in his book, The High Cost of Free Parking. In that regard, there's about 130 employees in the downtown area, and almost all of them park somewhere in the downtown area, and a lot of them park on my property. So my tenants are screaming at me that their customers, exactly the same thing everybody else is screaming about, are not getting a place to park, and they're paying the rent, which is true. So I am going to probably in the next month do exactly what the town has done. The only difference will be is that I'm going to enforce it, and I'm going to change all of my lots to 2-hour parking limited and no parking from 2 o'clock in the morning to 6 in the morning. And hopefully people will find other places to park. And I think the Old Town Shop Old Town Shop lot is a really good idea. I counted the cars personally, drove around town at Frozen Dead Guy days at 1 o'clock, and there were 4,700 cars in the area, and they extended all the way to Ridge Road, actually past Ridge Road. And so that was the volume of cars that we had at that event. And they managed to, and the event has grown, and they did some good things. They made some improvements and they made some mistakes. But I think there will probably be more events, and they do support the business community, and the same as other things. There are people who feel offended that their 1 day or 2 days out of the year are traffic jams in town. But having a professional traffic, and we have funds to do a couple more left in our budget during the high season to hire traffic control flaggers to get people through town, and it really worked well. Traffic really went fairly smoothly. There were very few momentary stops or even stops. There were no stops, probably over 3 minutes. That was a great improvement. So I definitely want to work with the town. I definitely want to be a part of the overall plan, and I definitely want to be cooperative with the town so that we mutually together and collaboratively try to improve and solve the parking problem. So this is what I'm going to try. It's not something that's cast in stone, but I'm going to try the 2-hour parking limit, probably starting somewhere in June. Again, thank you very much for your effort on this, and I hope to work with the town on the parking problem. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ron. And Tanya.
Hi. I had some notes here. Well, first of all, I think these all sound really good. I guess I'll start with the moratorium. I think that's a great idea. Wondering if there's any exceptions for if somebody were to like develop a completely empty lot. Because I feel like the reason why there's been so many exemptions is because you can't create parking where it doesn't exist in an already existing building. But if somebody were to develop an empty lot or tear down an existing building and then create, would original parking requirements exist or new requirements or just no requirements?
Just Googling, that's a great idea. Or just super fast. We actually are only recommending the moratorium in the central business district, not all zones.
No, I know, but in the central business district, say there's that lot next to Busey that they use for parking. They develop it. Would they not have to create one parking spot if they did it in this next 2 years, or would we ask them to go through a special review to create? They would not. So you guys are just straight up. Now would be the time to build if you were building in net. And I think that's
want to
fine.
offer clarification too. We are requiring the ADA space, which I'm sorry I didn't say that earlier.
Sure.
But yes, we also recognize that there is a desire for infill, and so perhaps that also plays a role. We did talk a little bit about that though. If we do a moratorium, what are the repercussions? And it could be just that you could see substantial buildings. Those will likely be
I mean,
businesses.
there's not a whole lot of lots, but that one is the one in my mind that, or if somebody were to tear down an existing building and, even eliminate the little bit of parking they might already have, because now there's no moratorium. My other suggestion would be to return that $5,000 to whoever you took that money from, since it's super unfair at this point, since nobody ever else is going to have to pay into that.
That was our intention too, was to return those funds to the one person who paid in, because we completely agree.
And then
I have a question. There's a chap who's been told he has to pay into the fund who's buying the apothecary, and that he's got to pay for 6 spaces. This is coming up at the BO2 meeting on the 17th, and I see great inequity here. What's going to happen to this guy? Is he going to get a buy it like everybody else has? I certainly hope so. But
well, right. So the recommendation right now is a moratorium. The moratorium is not in place. So for that specific application, those would be his options, because there is no moratorium. Now that applicant is seeking an exemption as well to have the parking removed. And we were going to inform the Board of Trustees that a moratorium recommendation is on the table being considered, just that this application happens to come before we actually bring this to the Board of Trustees.
So
why is he required to do this when the builder of the building wasn't?
Yeah, why was the apothecary not asked, or did they pay in, or did they get an exemption when they built it?
So the apothecary, and the way that they operated, they do have some parking on site, and so, but the Agati does not have enough for what they need, and so that's where it creates a little bit of challenge.
They're going to have more need for more parking than the apothecary was going to need.
So they're going to need 6 spaces, and so there's only 4 in the front.
What, I mean, this is off topic, but why would they need more if it's the same
So that's
square
the
footage?
way that That's the way it counts, the per square footage and then the number of employees that they'll have. Is this was
Oh, I see. They'll have more employees. Okay.
So we'll
Here's
bring this
what-
before the Board of Trustees, Ron, and what we will share with the board is we're recommending a moratorium, but that's not in place. So I can't enforce a moratorium if there's no Board of Trustees directive to do so.
So in theory, the Board of Trustees could say, you gotta find these spots or pay in.
Correct.
All right. Another thing I was thinking in my notes that for Old Town lot parking, I don't think you would need to pave that. It seems like a big expense for something that maybe in the future will end up getting ripped out for hopefully affordable housing 4, 5, 10 years down the line. So certainly I think another dirt lot is going to be acceptable in my opinion. I think there's 4 or 5 boulders on Schneider between Schneider First and Second Street that didn't exist. And when Salto first opened, they were so popular and people were parking along there. And then all of a sudden those boulders existed and it took out like 4 parking spots, a parallel parking spots that those boulders, I think you already told me that's town right away and they should be removed so we can get at least those 4 spots in such a central walkable business spot. That's just my opinion. That as pay parking, I think is fine. I just would want it to be very easy to use. So are you thinking kiosks or what? Or meters? Probably not meters. Nobody uses those, but you go to a kiosk and they're not working and then you got to walk another block to get to another one. It would be, and sometimes there's apps that work with these parking, so it would be good if maybe you could figure out what some of the apps are that Boulder uses or whatever, so that maybe it could be the same app so that people don't have to like download a whole new app in order to park. My idea would be like once you do the paid parking to make it as easy as possible so that I don't think people have so much of a problem with paying $2, but when you spend 20 minutes trying to do that, then it gets really frustrating. And I think that's it for my notes. I mean, I like the idea of all this extra parking. I like, finding some of those right-of-way spots that you were talking about by Kathmandu. Obviously, there might be some opposition to the people who live there, but approach them and see what they think. But in the end, all of First Street, all that parking, it's all right away. And a lot of that could be all the way to Fisherman's Lot, could be augmented in a much more efficient way. And then regarding Fisherman's Lot, I was probably the only person who was like hesitant to give it back to the wetland, but we were told we were not going to lose any parking, that the way it's designed, it's only going to use a portion of it, and that the that big berm that's there will get removed and that parking will be the same or just a couple spots less than what we already have. So I hope that's true, because that was a point that was given at the meeting regarding those parking spots. So I think that's it. Thank you guys.
Great, thanks, Tanya. And Steve Roundtree.
I think first, thanks Miranda and Jim and the Planning Commission for pulling this together. I think from working through on the wayfinding stuff, one of the challenges is for me personally, I think it's really hard to talk about putting a sign to parking spaces that don't exist. At busy times, if there's no parking spaces, all the signs in the world aren't going to help. So the ability to look at recommendation number 2 and with some opportunity to create spaces, I think that's the best thing I've seen in a long time. I do have a question on the RTD lot. Who owns the RTD lot?
RTD.
RTD owns it. So they have the ability to say it's for people using RTD services, correct?
Yeah, so they do identify it as public in that sense. So they don't discourage people from parking there. The big reason of why they're not interested in doing a parking garage is because it's rarely ever parked out. And so that's why we kind of want to be like, go there, because then it will actually create the demand that's needed to build the parking garage.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And paid parking, I mean, the comment keeps coming up that change is difficult. I think for a lot of people, changing their ability to have free parking is it's monumental when you start talking about like a minor little change and a minor cost. The change required in their behavior, it just feels like the end of the world to some people. But I kind of look at this from the prior to the meeting, we were talking about parking a little bit, and parking is in Colorado, in the Front Range in particular. This isn't it's not a Nederland problem. It's not a Boulder problem. It's not a Eldora ski area problem. It's everybody's problem. And unless things change, I just don't think that it's possible to continue to do things the way we're doing it. I do think that somewhere along the line, there also needs to be a willingness to have a really in-depth conversation about can this problem be solved with parking spaces, and what role does public transportation play in that, and is it just RTD that needs to solve that in the current form of one bus route coming through town. I think when I look at other mountain towns in Colorado that have managed to have create an environment where a car doesn't need to go someplace with everyone, they've solved it with free shuttles, and that's part of the solution in Boulder at some locations. Whether they're free or not, I think that ability to look at a parking space that's not in as convenient of a location and get someone willing to put a car there potentially because they can take a shuttle. The other piece of it, I think Ron brought this up, the employee parking. I tend to agree that unless there's I think it's a hard thing to enforce. But if all of the employees go to the businesses in the morning and take all the prime spots, that's a tough one. I know from a ski area standpoint, that's one of our big challenges, and we incentivize employees by paying them and providing a free shuttle. And I don't know if there's a solution to the employee parking in the central business district. I guess Ron's solution of 2-hour parking maybe solves it unless people take a break and move their car. So I think there's tons of opportunity here to look at some of these net new parking solutions that don't cost too much, because I think that's, maybe the first step. So thank you for pulling the information together and presenting it.
Great, thanks, Steve. And I'm assuming Rhea is not back on. Okay.
This is Tanya. I just wanted to agree about the shuttle idea. I know it's further down the line that it would be really important because you might not be disabled, but you might have a hard time walking. Or the ice. We have a lot of ice. We forget now that it's all beautiful, but it's very tricky sometimes walking around here. So a shuttle would be really beneficial in the long picture. That would be a good goal. Thanks.
Barbara is here.
I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you. 2 quick comments. Moratorium. I think it's unfair that you're only exempting folks in the CBD district and not general commercial from paying into the parking fund. It seems like it should cover all commercial businesses. So I'd recommend adding in the GC zoning to that. And then just to reiterate Tanya's point, I don't know if anyone on the SAB or ProSAB board actually did an official parking count, but do include the area along the existing road that will not be wetland and that can still be used for parking. So someone should come up with a plan and approach ProSAB or SAB with that. So definitely include that area. And it's basically the part that's not going to be part of the wetland is between the existing road and then the end of the kind of grassy semicircle, if you can kind of envision that. anyways, if you need the information, I can send you the grading plan for the wetland creation, which will probably be starting next spring. So you know what you have to work with. And I'm not exactly sure what other items SAB or ProSAB have for that area, but that was the intent. And those are my comments.
Great, thanks, Rhea. Do we have any other board comment or public comment? Nope. Hearing and seeing none. You're not looking for a nada for anything on this. This is just a discussion item?
Yeah, just discussion. So we'll go back and do some modifications and then are happy in your meeting next month. We're happy to come back to you and share with you some, if we've made adjustments based on all the feedback we've received, what those are.
Great, thank you.
I wondered, could I respond to a couple of the comments there?
Sure.
Yeah, this is Jim Reese from the Planning Commission. So I failed to cite Trustee Danforth and Trustee Corvallin, who did a lot of the work previously on this. That and the 2009 parking study was the basis for us to be able to kind of narrow that down and not have to start from scratch. So thank you very much. And also, I did want to mention that one of the things we talked about, I was very interested in trying to come up with an average annual amount of revenue per meter that we could talk to the BOT about and say, hey, this is what we can expect. But it's pretty difficult, as Cynthia could tell you, to come up with because there's a lot of variables. And so what we decided as she started talking about, oh, is it going to be 15 or 30 minutes? Are you going to have prime time additional parking after 2 hours? Is it going to go up? You know, those kind of things. We decided we didn't want to try and tackle that. We're not going to tell the BOT how to skin the cat. We're just going to make recommendations for broad things. And ultimately, everything that we have here is all recommendations to the BOT that can be refined when they start to look at the plan. And I fully expect it will be to what they want to pass. But so all those questions about the moratorium and unfairness, the BOT can address that at that time and say, hey, you know, we're going to give all the money back to everybody, you know, from the time of its inception, and we're going to go with another plan. The big driving reason for a moratorium for me was not only have I heard lots and lots of comment, public comment, board comment about the unequitable enforcement of that, but I think that parking is kind of becoming a town problem to solve and not as much of an individual, even though we have that in the core, in the code. I think we are getting to the point, especially in the CBD, where we need to really look at this as a broader town issue instead of saying, okay, you're either going to have to pony up a bunch of money or, you know, kind of create out of thin air this parking for your new development. And that's why we're looking at these additional outskirted parking spots. And it's very encouraging to hear that there might be some additional parking over by the fisherman's lot, because, you know, that really gives us, you know, all 4 points around town, a place that we could direct folks to and that they could possibly then be able to walk, you know, like I said, 10 minutes or less, and you're where you want to be. So I'm glad to hear positive comments from the DDA. And again, some of this will require some financial investment from the DDA to help us in partnership with some of this. So again, all recommendations, all completely changeable or adaptable by the BOT once it gets before them. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jim. I don't have any further comments on this subject, and I would like to call for a 5-minute break. And well, I guess 6-minute break. We'll come back at 8:25 and we'll see you then. All right, are we back on? Oh, interesting. Alrighty, it is 8:25. Hopefully everybody's back from our short break. And I believe we are ready to go into the mural hanging celebration with Kate.
Hello, everyone. Let me just get to there real quick. So, as you're aware, the mural that was approved last year is getting ready to be hung. Um, the artist experienced a family loss recently, but he is still wanting to hang the mural by Memorial Day weekend so that we can begin to enjoy the fruits of his labor. So, with that in mind, that's his end goal, and of course, we've communicated with him that we understand that there's a lot going on and that could change a little bit, but he is very much on board with wanting to get it hung and have it out in the world to be enjoyed. So, tonight I'm here to talk a little bit about, with the help from Danielle and Judy, if she'd like to chime in and she's still with us, to talk about what a proposed mural hanging celebration would look like. We have a small budget for it, given that the consultant that we hired to help us with this process didn't complete the project. So we have a small balance of funds that can be used to do a small celebration. And so my questions are, where would we like it to be held? Would we like to work with the feed store to coordinate something? Should it be during the week or the weekend? What type of event should it be? Should it be during the day and the evening and light refreshments be served? The other option that Greg had brought up, the artist, is that he wanted to have pictures taken so that merchandise can be made to be able to get some more funds that come back to the DDA to continue this program. That was one of his hopes to gift to us a little bit, was to give that opportunity so that this program can keep going. And he's excited about that. So that was one of the other questions, is what is there a desire for that? And if there's any other feedback that anybody has. And Danielle, please feel free to jump in and add anything.
I don't think there's a whole lot to add, Kate. Thank you very much for introducing this. Although we will be looking for a plaque to add to the occasion also that will mention the people involved, of course, the artists, Wild Bear Nature Center for helping us have a location for Greg to work on the mural, and the NDDA. I will be hoping to have those logos and the graphic design done and going over a draft for that too. So I would like to hopefully have that for the event, if we have an event, or at least close to it. That way people who come will see the whole package. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say.
Great, thanks, Danielle. Let's go around the circle and let's start with Tanya.
Hi. Well, that's exciting. I'm not sure if you're asking us for ideas for the celebration or just general approval. I'm super excited for the celebration. I don't really have any particular ideas. I would definitely work with the Business Connection with what they would want since it's on their wall. But I guess I'm not really exactly sure if you're asking us something or just general approval, which I do definitely approve.
So it is a little bit of general approval, since it wasn't originally envisioned for this project as part of the budget necessarily. So that's why I did want to talk about it in that way. But I also wanted to know if anybody had any specific feedback or had anything that they wanted to share about it before we got off to, working on it more diligently with the business owner and the building owner.
Okay, super. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm excited for it.
Great, thanks, Tanya. And Steve Roundtree.
Exciting to see this going up. I think coordinating something that works with Ned Pet and Feed, and I guess ultimately the building owner, since they were kind of crucial to keeping the space available. And as far as merchandise, I don't know what if is that like postcards and prints that would be sold to like kind of generate some continued funding, or anything like that seems like a great idea. And I think that's what I've got.
Great, thanks, Steve. And Rhea?
Hi, sorry, I just am having trouble. I'm muting myself on my phone. But Kate, how much money is left over from, I'm assuming it was Carissa?
Yes. So technically, there's $600 left over on
Okay.
her portion of the contract.
Well, first of all, I think it's a great idea to market Greg's artwork, and if he's allowed that to be funded back to the DDA, great idea. Let's make sure we don't get underwater on purchasing extra T-shirts and things like that. So just make sure it's a profit-generating venture. But I cut out for a while today due to internet connection problems. But did you guys all talk about the murals for 2022?
No,
And
not yet. That's
okay.
That's going to be. I don't. Barb can tell us better when she
Okay.
go back to action, but that will be an action item that you haven't missed.
Okay, so basically, there's a little uncertainty in one of the mural location. So I don't want to spend too much money of our extra money when we have some uncertainties. And I feel like we need to, even though we have contingency in the 2022 budget, I think it would be prudent to try to keep as much extra money that we have in case we need it for the 2022 murals. That's all. I'm not sure how much money, a couple $100 to spend on some refreshments and food, great, but I don't know if we need to spend all 600. That's just my kind of gut sense.
And I agree. That was my instinct as well.
Okay. Otherwise, sounds great. Can't wait to go to the party.
Thanks, Rhea. And Andrew?
Yeah, no, excited to finally see this be able to go up, and yeah, to just echo Ray's point, make sure that we don't spend more than we've got on merchandise with the available funding. But no, I don't have a whole lot else to add. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Ron?
I'm a real fan and great proponent of public art. I want to do my part. I have a quick question. You're going to sell merchandise. Are you giving the artist a percent of each sale? I advocate that, and I want to.
This was his idea, and it was something he wanted to do for to keep public art going. In his mind, this is a way to continue that by having those funds and having people spend the money on it, like it, and then want to have the memorabilia or have some piece of marketing, and then it can continue, and then that money goes back to continue. So that's really where I think his intent was. And Danielle, jump in if I'm wrong, but in the future, it was only because it was offered to us this way that would absolutely be something that we would consider. But this is because this was something that he brought up at the very beginning of this process that he wanted to do, and he continues to bring it up. So we're just that's why we're trying to get your feedback on it, because it would be our investment, but it would also be our gain as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a great idea. I'm glad I did it, but I think as far as a precedent, I think other artists would join in. I just think that his generosity is going to exceed that of others, and that as an incentive to continue doing, I think it's such a good idea that we should incentivize all the artists to do it and have a policy that we pay them 10% of the sales or 5%, or whatever the art committee thinks might be a reasonable way. Talk to the artists, get their input too. But nevertheless, I think art needs to be rewarded right at the source. And even though he's willing to just donate it all, I don't think that's a good idea. I think he should be remunerated, and anybody, if we do this sort of thing, should be. So that's my input.
Great, thanks, Ron. Tom, do you have any questions or comments?
Nope. But I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I think murals look great. I watched in Chicago, we unveiled 350 of them over 2 years.
Wow.
And it was a street party every Friday afternoon to roll out another one.
Amazing, thank you.
A lot more canvas than we have here.
Great. Do we have any public comment? Or Danielle, would you like to say anything else?
I greatly appreciate the feedback. It is in our contract that we will be doing marketing with the artwork, so the artists signing on understand that we will be reproducing the artwork to raise funds for Nederland Public Art to keep the program going. And I do really appreciate that we should be giving a percentage back to the artist to say thank you and continue supporting the work that they are giving us and that we are paying them for. I do think that whatever we use from the leftover money from Carissa, I think we will be able to make that back. I'm looking forward to learning about numbers and finding sources to help us produce some merchandise to get that rolling. It looks like the general approval is good, and I am excited to be working with Ned Feed and Pet and seeing if we can collaborate with them and having a celebration.
Great, thank you. And Danielle, do you have, he says before Memorial Day, of course, that's coming up quickly on the 30th. Do we have an idea of the date that it will happen so that we can share it with the community?
We are aiming for the 20th. And again, Greg did have some family concerns come up that we need to be delicate with. But the 20th is what we have on our calendar. And the person who helped us create the frame has that on his calendar. So we're aiming for that. If something comes up, we'll have to be able to be flexible with it. So I still feel safe that if we tell the community by the end of the month as an announcement might be good. But I'm hoping that we'll follow through with the 20th. And if something happens over that weekend, I believe that's a Friday.
So Danielle, he already isn't going to be able to make the 20th. That's what I was saying, that he is hoping to be able to do it by the Memorial Day now. So not too far off, but that he still wants it up by then because he would like it to be enjoyed, as the weather turns. So that's where we are. So we are a little bit off, but let's go back to some timing because I do think an event is probably going to be more likely in mid-June.
Sure.
But we'll need to work with that'll be dependent on the building owner and the business. I think,
Okay.
we'll have to coordinate with them, and we'll definitely let the board know about all of that. But given that some things are so in flux, I think it's hard to pick a date right now. But
Okay.
I hope that it would be mid-June is what I would like to do and
Great.
have us all land on that within the next week. That's my hope, but that's something I had hoped for our committee to talk about tomorrow.
Okay, great. I'll need to contact Dale because I missed that information. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle.
Great, thank you. If there is no other public comment on this item, I would say let's move into the next one. Piece of paper. All right, that wraps up our discussion items tonight. So let's go back to our one action item, and it looks like Danielle will be presenting this.
Great, thank you, Barb. I'm gonna put share on the computer. So bear with me, this is the first time I've been doing it. I hit the share button. Does that bring up my screen?
It should, Danielle, and then you'll just pick whichever box you want to share.
Okay, great. So first I gave a list in the packet. I don't know which one I want to share. Was this it? I'm confused, but please be patient with me. No, that's you guys. So I sent a list of the artists. We had 17 applicants for our mural, which is wonderful. And thank you,
Danielle, do you
Rhea,
want us to
for-
be looking at a different screen? We're looking at the WebEx screen.
Yeah,
I think all you
I'm
need to
sorry.
do is hit the other tab. I see the 2022 applicants Google Drive tab.
Oh, was that up?
It's behind the tab that you're open in right now. We see
There we
Cisco.
go. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for your help.
No, now we're looking at your emails, Danielle.
Now we're looking at your email.
Oh, but I have it on my screen. The artist.
Stop sharing and then click the screen you want to get.
Okay. How do I find you guys and stop sharing?
Can take over and then okay, you can go again.
Okay. Here we go. I think that's it. Do you see that clearly? The list of applicants for public mural 2022?
Yes.
Excellent. So we had 17 applicants for these two locations, which is fabulous. And the artwork again was absolutely wonderful. We had some new people show up. The word is getting out. We had some repeated applicants. Those artists are still interested to see in what we're doing and being a part of it. Of these 17, we picked 4 finalists with a backup artist in case when we go to sign a contract, something has come up and they can't fit the timeline, then we have a backup artist for each one. And I did have a mishap with my list of artists, and I apologize, but instead of Erica Raven as the runner-up for the one mural, I have the list here. It is actually Jessica Moon, so I will bring up her portfolio too. So the artist that we want for the upper Tebow wall, which is what was brought up earlier by Rhea. Tebow did not follow through with a contract, so we will need to talk about that. But we are maintaining having 2 artists and 2 new murals this summer. And the artist for the first selection is Sally Ecker, and her backup artist, if something comes up, is Jessica Moon. And then the second artist that we chose is Julia Williams, and her backup artist is Casey Pyle. And we'll go over those 4 portfolios. So then I have to stop sharing, find the portfolios, and then bring that up, right?
Yeah, that would be the easiest.
Okay. Oh, I did it before.
I'll just kick you out and then you can do it again.
Wonderful. Thanks. All right. So I had these up here.
And I will say, all but one of the individuals, those images are in the packet. But you'll need to show the individual that wasn't included in the packet to the board.
Yes. So I just need to find the email that links me to them. Oh, this isn't in public art. Almost there. There we go. Okay, now I can share again. So I find you guys on WebEx and share. All right, so we have the portfolios up. Do you guys see Erica Raven on top there with the folders?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So Sally Eckert is our first artist. I'm going to go down and find her. Here she is. She has a letter of interest. She has her portfolio here of her work. Let me know if I'm going too fast. I kind of want to share these up closer. Her detail is incredible. And going through this artwork with the rest of the group was very fun. I don't know how much detail you want me to get into in talking art. It's also getting late and I can't hand you a cup of coffee, but her portfolio was beautiful. and I'm excited for her interest. So I'll just kind of page through these, and if you have any questions, comments while we're looking at them, please speak up. This is one of the first murals of hers that I saw down in North Boulder. It just wowed me. They're really encouraging to see them in person.
Where's that one at?
This one is North Boulder, Boulder Housing Partners.
Okay. At Yarmouth.
Mm-hmm. This one's one of my favorite. Ethan's mural at the Louisville Elementary Library. Her proportions and color and depth are just phenomenal. I'm very excited to see what she comes up with for Nederland.
Did we give any guidance on what we want to see for Nederland?
Yes, so I also included in the packet a review of our request for qualifications, which Rhea summarized very well on what we are looking for. And if you want to pull that up, or after we review the portfolios, I can pull that up so we can all look at it. So this is Sally Eckert. She's our first winner of our preference for the upper Tebow wall, which is what we are looking into a new location for. And we'll be talking about that as other business, or I will be bringing it up later. Her backup artist for the upper Tebow wall is Jessica Moon, and I will pull up her portfolio. She's also a repeat applicant from last year. She has her information there, and then we'll just look at her artwork. This one was down at the Liquor Mart that was torn down, and the new building's going up, and there were several murals there. This one was one of my favorite of them. Her artwork is very bright and catching and very nature oriented and climate awareness also. And she is our backup artist in case Sally has had something come up and cannot follow through with signing a contract and being chosen, then she is our choice number 2 for that location that we pick. This one's an installation piece, just her awareness and thought going into things. I don't remember the full story of this one, so it's a little confusing towards the murals, but again, her climate awareness and thought put into it is wonderful. So that's some of Jessica Moon's work. The winner that we would like for our Poe wall, the concrete wall, is Julia William. I'm going to bring up her portfolio. Julia Williams. Designosaur, I like her name there. So she has her portfolio, her letter of interest, and why she wants to be involved when you can read it. So that her work is a little more recognizable down in Boulder. Very strong lighting, contrast, very good proportions in her art. Vibrant, catchy. She's good with animals. I'm excited for hers. And the floral is really nice. The trees are beautiful. Nice, strong portfolio. I'm excited to have her be one of our artists.
I wanted to jump back to the question about the identified themes and goals, because it might be buried in there and I'm not finding it really well, but there was a 2022 22 initial RFQ review document. And the identified themes and goals that were put out in the RFQ are the environment, resilient culture, progressive tourists, festivals, proximity to nature, nonconformity, wilderness, independent hippies, recreation, local businesses, wind, music history, indigenous history, and diversity. And it also stated that design should complement the streetscape of Netherlands' unique mountain town. The intent of the mural program is to create hopeful, positive experiences that are reflective of the Netherlands community and core values.
That's a lot of boxes to tick.
I don't think it was necessary that they had to include all of those. It was just more, those are the things that that were speaking to people.
So I brought that up while Kate was reading it, so you guys can see that. And then we can review the backup artist, who is Casey Pyle. For the Poe wall. How do I get out of here? My back arrow is not working. Oh, here we go. Okay. Does that help answer the question of what the
Instructions, 100%.
excellent. All right, and here is our backup artist, Casey Pyle, for the Poe wall. She does graphic design here in town. Her main piece right now is over at Knotted Root. Her colors are vibrant. She's got her art studio here and is active in the community. That's the one at Knotted Root. I remember when I first saw that, I walked up, I was like, oh, what paint was it used? It's beautiful, it's catchy, it fits the establishment. It ties in well. Her graphic design is smart. I think she is a good choice for finding something that's good for our town. Creating something that is good for our town. This portfolio isn't necessarily murals. This is why she's a backup artist. But I think she does have the experience and will be a good choice if we need someone to fill in for Julia Williams. And again, there's her information there. What was I think that was it on that. The review for what we're looking for, the 4 artists that we chose, the #1 artists for each location. And what I'm asking tonight is consent that we move forward with these artists. Your overall approval that you like what you saw, you believe in our decisions, and approve for us to keep going.
Great, thanks, Danielle. Let's go around the circle and see if anybody has any questions or comments. And let's start with Ron.
Well, Danielle's put an incredible amount of effort into this project, and I want to thank her for doing so. Much as I support the project, I'm no professional whatever. So I think that she and her committee need to make the decisions, and so far I think they've made very good ones. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Tanya.
Yeah, this is great. I was lucky enough to get a preview of some of the artwork. I'm more off than on the public arts board, but wish I had more time. And so every one of those that they picked were ones that I felt would be great candidates. So I will put my trust into all these great volunteers and their taste. I think they have great taste. I think it's going to be great. And thank you for doing all this. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Tanya. And Steve Roundtree.
Thanks, Danielle. Well, I think Ron mentioned it. unbelievable amount of work that's gone into pulling this together, it looks like. So thank you. Really fun to look through the different artists that were chosen and think about the potential for what the murals could look like going forward. I think it's a really cool opportunity for Nederland. So thank you for pulling this all together, and also I think trusting your decision making based on what I looked at. They look like really cool options. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Steve. And Rhea.
Danielle, did thank you for pulling together the presentation. First of all, did you want to talk about other alternatives our subcommittee has been talking about instead of the Tebow wall? Are we ready to discuss any of that? Do we want to discuss that?
So, Miranda, I have a question. Should that be a part of this discussion, or should we do that during other business?
I would do it during other business because it's not a part of this action item.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. As everyone said, that's a lot of work, but great. I've spent a lot of time looking through the the artist's work, and I'm excited to see whatever comes up, and have faith that it'll be great. So that's God, thank you.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Tom, do you have any questions or comments?
Gorgeous work. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Thanks for pulling it together. Those are some astounding artists. Carry on.
Great, thanks. And I don't have any additional comment on this except to say great job as well. Danielle, you mentioned the information you're looking for specifically, but I don't see the very specific questions that we need to answer. So can we have those back?
Yes. If someone else finds them quicker than I do, I'm going
So the only question that you're answering right now is if you approve of moving forward with the proposed artist. That's the only question right now. There will be another question about a backup for the Tebow wall, but we'll do that during other discussion. So this is really just, do you approve of what the committee has brought to you this evening?
Yeah. Does the board consent for NPAC, Netherlands Public Art Committee, to move forward with these chosen artists?
Great, thank you. That said, I would entertain a motion.
I motion that the board moves forward with the chosen artists for the mural.
Second.
And Kate, will you call the roll?
Rhea Ortner?
Yes.
Barb Hart?
Yes.
Andrew Duarte?
Yes.
Ron Mitchell?
Yes, sorry it took me so long.
Danielle Kraus?
Yes.
Steve Roundtree?
Yes.
Tanya Corvallin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of our action item. Should we go to committee reports? Yes. Do we? My committee report is in there. My chair report. I'm sorry. I don't have anything to add to it, so I'm good with skipping over mine. Ron, do you have anything to report on the treasurer's report? Thank you for providing that.
Yes. I just, again, would like on our next meeting to propose that we buy another CD for 500,000 and increase our line of credit to where it will be able to carry any project that we do in the future. So I want to put that on the agenda that we do that at the next meeting. The short brief thing in the packet is adequate for the rest of the report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Kate?
Sorry. So mine is really short this month, and I won't go into that. You can just kind of look into there. Just excited to be keeping moving our projects forward, and you'll hear a little bit. Maybe I chime in during some of the project updates. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you. And Miranda with the town staff report.
My report's in the packet. I don't have anything else to add to it.
Okay, great, thank you. Do we have a committee report for beautification?
Beautification committee met, interviewed 2 candidates to take care of the flowers, and I believe it was Judy Evans who accepted the position. Isn't that right, Kate?
Yes.
And you know, we're looking at planting the flowers sometime in early to mid-June, depending on the weather. So that project is moving forward. I have a few little like loose ends to sort of mop up with the nursery to make sure they're still on board with actually bringing up and helping us to plant them and all that. I think our budget also includes some weed steaming in the downtown area, so I need to contact them and get them on board still. But yeah, things are moving along. So, Kate or Ron, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just really glad we're getting the thing off the ground. I think it's going to be real successful this summer. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. She did play with marbles, yeah.
That's all.
Great, thanks, Rhea and Ron. And Big Springs Committee.
Andrew, go ahead.
Well, we had got a chance to have a meeting with Edge and Heath Dillon and George Chelwick, and sounds like the Edge wasn't quite as far along in getting some of their submittals to JBA, and JBA needed to still also get some information to Edge. So things are moving along, and we're not in fear of, Edge not being able to do work because they're ready. So it wasn't as urgent, it seemed, and also weather with the Black Forest lot still needing to dry out. So it does appear that Heath and Edge will be able to work concurrently, and they're still kind of working towards finalizing some engineering on Tebow's end and materials. So we expect work to start happening there probably in 4 to 6 weeks, possibly sooner on Edge, which is the drainage contractor. And Tebow is just resolving some questions on fill, what type of fill they could use, and getting some engineering stuff dealt with. So that's moving forward a little bit slower than we want, but not in any case where it's going to prevent one contractor from doing the work, and we don't risk losing the contractor. So that's the only update there.
Great, thank you. And committee, Catherine's not here tonight, so we don't have any update on that. Communications committee. Kate is meeting with Spafford. I don't have anything further. Do you have anything else on that, Kate?
No, just that there are some questions lingering about the website that we, I guess, didn't realize. And so that's what we're cleaning up right now is making sure Spafford has everything that he needs on the final draft so that can go up. And so that's really where we are. And so I'm meeting with him tomorrow to start getting some of those final ones done. And yeah, we're moving along, and hopefully everything will be all up and cleaned up by the end of June.
Great, thank you. And Andrew or Tanya, do you have anything on the performance space?
Andrew, if you want to step in, it's fine.
we met, Tanya and Chris and I met and looked at the site, which I think is where the coffin races were. Is that right, Tanya? I wasn't here for President Day.
Yeah, I mean, that
Yeah.
is the desired spot, yeah.
Yeah, so we looked at that and think that, you know, the we're gonna start having work sessions with the various, with ProSab, and other interested parties. Oh, thanks, Ayla. Sorry about that. And also getting I think I'm gonna try and figure out how to get a simple rendering or design of what at least kind of Chris had in mind, slash, you know, a stage near where the power is and the infrastructure for the bathrooms. Because there's a general concept that seems to make sense, that fits the site. But I think just to even begin having a dialogue with other, you know, boards and interested parties and public, we need to get something on paper, so people can visualize it, kind of like the downhill bike trails, etc. So that's kind of my, I think, next step is to get a simple rendering where we can start using that as a dialogue and move it through work sessions to the place where we can hopefully start getting some talk about next year's budget, having some funds for requests for proposals for design of the space that then move it further on down. So it's good meeting to kick it off, but not a whole lot more than that right now. Any
Great, thank
questions
you.
on that? Okay.
All right, and wayfinding with Steve Carew not here. Do we have an update, or are we going to do that next month?
We will probably doing that next month. I heard from Steve today, and there is no update right now. But hopefully next month we'll have a bit more direction on next steps.
Great, thank you. And I skipped public art because we talked about art, but there could be other updates. Does anyone have anything on that?
Yeah, we're moving along. Thank you guys so much. I do hope to talk about the next thing on that under other stuff. But yeah, that's all.
Great, thank you. And Kate, would you like to do an update on the budget process?
Yes. So tonight I just wanted to put into your packet to get everyone to start thinking about the budget process. So this is my proposed schedule for us so that we're not in August having some running around trying to get together our budget and trying to fit it into 2 meetings, especially since, as we've talked about tonight, there's the potential for some different projects. So my hope is that this month we can start talking and put it into your mind so that in our June meeting we can discuss potential 2023 projects like performance space, like if we want to start working on the Riverwalk. All these things that have come up tonight are potential things that we can discuss next month for different projects, since we are, have moved forward several of the projects that were in the pipeline. It's now time to look at what's next. In July, I would like to review the 2022 budget and where we are in current spending, and I'll have all of that for you then. Part of the reason I might be able to have that for you at the June meeting, but I want to make sure that the audit's done with town and that everything is cleaned up so that you're getting the truest numbers. And so that's part of that. And maybe I will be able to have that for you for the next meeting. I don't know, but at least know that that will be by the July meeting, having that so that we can, again, keep working through the budget process. And at the August meeting, I would like to merge where our spending is and the things that we want to spend on in the future and start to have review the draft for the 2023 budget. And then at the September meeting, approve the 2023 budget to be sent to the Board of Trustees for their final approval. Does anybody, I'm hoping that works for everyone. If somebody has a big feeling about that, please feel free to reach out. But I just kind of wanted to get us all starting to think on that train about what we're going to do for 2023.
Great, thanks, Kate. I'm excited to start working on the budget. I have no further questions. Does anyone else have a question? Hearing and seeing none, I would ask if there is any other business.
Yes, I would like to talk about other business. So it came up earlier, and I'll share my screen again and try to be super quick about this. Oh, that's not what I had up there, but this is part of it. So for the mural, the Tebow site did not go through. It seems that Stephen Tebow is having trouble, not trouble, but other things that he needs to take care of, and so communication didn't go as well. And now Netherland Public Art is looking for another site for our chosen artist. It came up today, so I went and got this photo super quick of the co-op. This green building at the co-op is an option that I would like to get your guys' opinion on. And that's the first photo, and then I'm gonna go back into my mail here. I had it up, I'm sorry, I'm not being as quick as I wanted to be. So can you kick me out and then I'll look for this more clearly? Thank you. That's weird because it's right there now. All right, so now I can close that out. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not more organized. I'll try to share this again. The other option for the new site is through Ron Mitchell at the Hop House. Share that. There we go. All right, so Tebow Properties has not followed through with a contract. We're looking for a new location, either the Hop House with Ron Mitchell or Risham's new restaurant location, or the photo I just showed you of the co-op. And Risham's location is the concrete structures, the pillars. She's also open to other parts of her buildings, but these ones are unfinished, readily available. This photo is upside down. I tried several times to load it correctly and it would not. But that wall, along with those concrete supports, are available for artwork. And then a photo of the Hop House also. So these are three possibilities. I wanted to ask the board if there was a preference on a new location since Tebow is not going to work out, and if you consent to us moving forward to securing one of these sites. And I didn't get the aim in time for the packet, which is why this is other business, and I would appreciate any comments.
Great, let's go around the circle and see if anyone has other comments. Would you like to start, Rhea?
To be honest, I thought the bare concrete walls on Rasham's building at the Kathmandu would be my first choice because it's just bare concrete. I thought that would be a great location. It's just my humble opinion.
Great, thanks, Rhea. And Andrew?
Yes, I'm a fan of the bare concrete as well. I talked with Rasham about that in the past, so I'm glad to see that that's come to be an option. Not that I'm against the Hop House. I just think kind of pulling in to that area, visitors, there's gets a lot of traffic through people, going either up to RTD or just it's a high traffic area, and I think those are calling out for some art. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Ron?
Well, I'm flattered that you'd like to use that, and I feel the same as Jesse Sievers. If you really support something, you should put your money where your mouth is. The Hop In has a lot of windows in it, and getting artwork around those windows is, I think, difficult. And I'd like to see a real clean slate. And you'll notice a lot of buses. You can see out of the windows of the buses, but the murals and the advertising on those buses is put on with some sort of medium that allows people to look out the windows, but you can't look in. And you get the entire image, and it looks pretty good. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know much about the thing, but if they use that medium, I would be willing to support whatever artwork they choose, and I don't want necessarily to be in on the judgment. I don't have to be, but I would put up anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 to see to it that the artwork covers the windows and has the entire side of the building can display the art. So I'm making that offer, and yeah, I'm not offended at all if another project is picked, but that offer is out there. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ron. And Tanya.
Well, I mean, I'll just go with the flow on this one. What most people think, what the art committee wants. Ultimately, I would defer to that. I think that's really interesting idea that Ron said about paint that could go over the windows where people could see out, but not in. I have no idea what that medium is. Maybe it's some kind of wrap. So in this case, you know, I don't really have a strong opinion. So I would defer to the arts committee, public arts, the mural committee.
Great, thanks, Tanya. And Steve Roundtree.
I think this is one we have some really amazing opportunities with the art that we have. So any property owner that's willing to have the art put on their buildings, I say 2 thumbs up to that. And I kind of go back to, I think some of it comes down to the space and the artist and how it all pulls together. And I trust the work that the art committee is doing to like coordinate the right location for the right art.
Great, thank you.
And one more quick thing. Thanks, Ron, for throwing in that if something happens at the Hop House, you'll support it financially as well.
Great, thanks. My comment, I like all of the spaces, but I also think Kathmandu would be a phenomenal spot. So that gets my vote personally. Do we have public comment?
Just a question, where's the hot house?
The Hop House is Ron's building that's next to the alpaca store.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is right along the highway.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Just so you all know, I grow hops on the building, and the name is the Hop Inn, and basically it's a play on words, so you can hop in and sleep, or you can look at the hops or harvest them. So please call it the Hop Inn.
You got it.
Great, thanks. Is there any additional public comment? Danielle, you're just looking for guidance?
Yes, I am looking for guidance. I appreciate that several of you had said you're all right with the art committee making a choice. I have written down 3 votes for Kathmandu, 1 for the Hop Inn, and 2 votes for the art committee to choose. So I'm looking for what do you guys want us to do?
I think since it's just an other business tonight, do you want to bring it back for an item next month? And then hopefully Catherine and Steve Carreau can weigh in as well?
I feel like it might be time sensitive. Is there a way we could expedite a decision to get an artist into contract? Or Kate, do you think timeline would work out if we wait a month for that? We could ask the artists to keep in mind these sites, but that would mean signing on an artist in a contract without a chosen site and then not knowing what to design for.
Yeah, that's really the issue. If we wait another month, it could potentially we could potentially let them go, have the agreement, but not have the building owner piece of the agreement. And like Danielle said, have these places in mind, but that might be a lot. I don't know.
Hey, I have a suggestion. Why don't we contact the artist and ask them if they have a preference?
I really like that idea.
So,
Yeah, I think that makes
we
sense.
absolutely cannot wait a month. I think that this needs to happen, needs to have happened yesterday, to be honest. So,
So I think
Okay,
your
so
challenge is you didn't put in any of your agenda items that this was going to be something you were going to vote on, so you really can't take action tonight. You can hold a special meeting and find a time to come back together in a couple of days, but you wouldn't be able to vote on it tonight.
I would love to set up a special meeting so we could keep moving on our calendar with it. How do we do
Yeah.
that?
So why don't I send out an email tomorrow to try to get a time, because I think this is a special meeting that would only be probably 15-20 minutes unless you all have more to, since we've discussed a lot today. I'm hoping that we could get something within the next week that works for everyone to do quickly.
That would be
Did I lose everybody again?
We're here.
hey, this is Rhea. I'm just wondering, why does the DDA have to vote on this change in location? Is it really that substantial that we have to vote on it again?
You
I
vote
guess
on your other locations though, so I think
we did.
if you voted on your other locations and that's a part of your record,
I think
a
it.
moves
Well,
without
vote.
having it on the record is
I don't remember a vote on the locations. I remember there was approval when we put out the RFP and said these are the locations that we're putting in the request for qualifications. But do you all remember like having a big choice of all these locations and there was some kind of voting of the top two? Maybe I don't remember.
No, I think you're right, Rhea. We, as a committee, chose what would work with the submissions from our call for sites. This I wasn't really sure how to handle because Tebow dropped out of it, and we already have the call for artists filled in. So this was what I came up with. If we could handle it better and more efficiently, I'm definitely down with that if we get that approved. I just wanted to bring it up that there's been a major change in a site
Oh
location.
yeah. Oh no, I mean we absolutely need to let the board know that we're making a
Okay.
location change, but I don't guess I'll leave it up to Miranda. You're the town admin if you think it's something that the DDA really has to vote on and we all have to meet again. But I guess I'm just wondering if
I
we
think your
really need to.
challenge, I mean, I guess your challenge is going to be is if you have public record that shows certain areas and now you're making a
Okay.
change, not on the record, not a vote, that's going to be the issue. And so
Okay. All right, sure. All right, let's hold a special meeting then. Maybe Danielle ahead of time. I'm wondering if you could contact um Julie Eckert, Ms. Sally Eckert, because she's our first choice, and say, hey, do you have a preference? And then we can find out from her, and then we can schedule the special meeting. How does
Yeah.
that sound?
I think that would be good.
I think that will be good. I'll touch base with the committee and wait to get that email from Kate and go from there.
Great, thank you.
Sounds great.
Is there any other business tonight? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.